Hello, MotoGP World fans, and welcome to this episode of Talking MotoGP with myself, Rob Portman, and as always, Paul Scott joining me. And this time we're going to talk MotoGP from the Brno circuit in Czech Republic, a circuit that always delivers. It's one of the best circuits on the calendars for me. I know a lot of my mates that have been lucky enough to go and watch the MotoGP, not only this year, but in previous years, say it's just one of the most fascinating places to go watch motorcycle racing. And yeah, I just look at those hills and it just looked fantastic this weekend. The racing's always good, but this weekend there's lots to talk about, not only on track, but probably more off track. Paul, everything good your side?
Yeah, all good. Thanks, Rob. Good evening. How's it, Rob? How are you? Welcome to everyone who's tuned in. And I've got to just say quickly, Rob, I got a phone call from Joe Rogan. He wants to know if he can call the next UFC fight because he thinks Bezzecchi might be putting himself up for that because it doesn't look like he's trying to win a world championship on the track. So maybe he's trying to do it in the UFC. No, jokes aside, yeah, lots to talk about. But I do agree with you. What a racetrack. And obviously, the weather played part. Everything just, it was just one of those weekends where every session that I watched was just better and better. And yeah, it was just fantastic.
If you're in the land of YouTube, please hit the like button, subscribe if you're not already subscribed. And in the land of Facebook, just hit that like button and share it. Let's spread the word as far and wide as possible and get more people interacting with us on this interactive talk show podcast. It's not only about myself and Paul and our views, it's about everyone in the comments. Harvey Lowe is in pole position, and even better news, Marc signing for another 2 years. Another talking point, one of many that we're going to get on today. Gary Granger, 5810, in second place on the podium.
Well done, Gary. I'm proud of you.
Gary, nice. We're going to have to send you a prize of some sort, packet of jelly beans or something. Brian Ritchie in third place. Good evening, Rob, Paul, and everyone here. Sebastian Tion Trump, 6811. Hi, guys. Dean Lemon, Dave McBain, Mike Teal. Good evening, Rob and Paul. Greeting from myself and grandson Liam. Mike and Liam, hope you are always well. Thank you for always tuning in. Jean Creel, Paolo Cecchetti. Paolo, hello. Welcome once again. Dick Crosby, Robert De Sosa, CP Buertz, David Hawes, Kevin Ferree, Michelle Lewis, and then my brother this is my brother jumping on the bandwagon. 55 million paragraphs. Okay, but if you don't know, MotoGP World does a monthly digital magazine, and it's free of charge. Click that link and go read some great content for free and support.
Always very good.
Yeah, and support the advertisers that support us, please, because without them, there is no MotoGP World, and we can't do this. Stiggy Wiggy, these YT notifications, YouTube notifications don't work. I get notified like an hour late. Stiggy Wiggy, sorry, I'll try and do some investigating there. I'm not too sure why. I suppose because it's maybe I'm UK time, and it's, I don't know. That shouldn't really make a difference. I'm not too sure. MotoGP 77, Bezzecchi, he needs to learn from Juan when it comes to the marshals because he's the one who knows the most. Clyde Matthews, Daryl Holmes, everyone's tuning in, Paul. So listen, let's start with the giant Italian elephant in the room. I mean, Paul, over the last couple of race meetings, we've spoken about, Aprilia had their dominance. They were dominating the field. Their riders were, chest out. Aprilia were chest out. Everything was going right for them. They went to Mugello and dominated Ducati's backyard. Everything was going right. And we spoke about, it's theirs to lose. Everyone's kind of mentioned it's theirs to lose. It's about management now and managing the situation and the pressure that comes with, championship leading. And this is a team that hasn't really been in title contention. Last year was kind of there and thereabouts, but Marc pretty much ran away with it. But this year, serious contenders. And we spoke about it's not just about the rider's responsibility in bringing a championship. It's the team. It's the experience of the team and how they handle the pressure and their team manager. And rightfully so. We've had nothing but praise for Aprilia and Bezzecchi. A little bit, towards Martin, well-deserved. But then there's the flip side of Martin that we've seen over the last couple of weeks, questioning his, what kind of team player he's going to be now, especially with everything that's happened. And he's going to Yamaha and after Mugello, and I didn't actually mention it in the podcast that we had after Mugello, but Aprilia really did boast, like this is our house now, and they really did throw the cake in Ducati's face. And this is where karma sometimes can fight back, because since then, Aprilia have, Ducati, I should say, have really come back. If you think from Mugello, where, I was one of them, I put my hand up, I said, Marc, there's no ways Marc can come back from this, surely. Bezzecchi and Aprilia are going to have hiccups, but they're not going to be, karate chopping marshals and missing races. And, that's never going to happen. Marc at one stage was 120 points behind. Paul, coming out of Czech Grand Prix, he's 40 points behind. I mean, let's talk about the incident first. I'd love to get, obviously, your opinion, everyone else's opinion, because there's been so many opinions out in the world of social media, which everyone's entitled to. Of course, I think the general kind of debate is, have some people taken it too far, and what are the thoughts? So, Paul, first of all, I'd like to get your thoughts on how you saw that situation play out, and if you think the penalty was just, and what happened. Why did Bezzecchi do that? How did Rivola and Aprilia handle things? Just a general overview from your point of view.
Yeah, so a couple of things, Rob. I think first of all, we've seen the first cracks in the Aprilia facade, if we want to call it that, between Rivola and Martin. We saw it last weekend. He was furious when Martin took everyone out, and he let them know. He put the blame squarely on Martin, even before they'd analysed kind of the crash, which in hindsight we know was, certainly it was Martin's fault, but there was more to it than just braking 10 meters too late at 200 k's an hour. The whole shot device, the track surface, blah, blah, blah. We've discussed that. But Rivola came out and shot his mouth off. Very upset, and rightfully so, but maybe should have been a little bit more circumspect. Then we have the issue with Bezzecchi. So first of all, let's look at Bezzecchi's sprint races. What's he crashed now? 4 out of 9, I think, is how it's gone this season. So that on its own says sprint races are where he's under a little bit of pressure, a little bit of more pressure. So maybe he's overriding the bike. He wasn't leading. In the races where he's got to the front, he's run away with it. And that's been Sundays. And that's maximum points, and well done to him. But now he's struggled in the sprints. He didn't get the start he wanted. He was lying, I think, 5th when he crashed. Had he not crashed, this incident wouldn't have happened.
Yeah.
So that's the first thing. He has to take responsibility for it. The next thing is, so I understand, the bike's lying in the dirt, even though they've got that sort of, what would you call it, a stone guard in the exhaust, so that stones can't get, stones can. When that oak picked the bike up, 100% he was doing his job, and the bike hadn't cut out, so he probably grabbed the throttle to pick the bike up, revved the bike. Bezzecchi revved himself. Yeah, spur of the moment incident, but you can't say that. But we should, he shouldn't. Certainly, it shouldn't have happened. He just lost his rag in the moment, and yes, I can understand, but he's a professional athlete. He's a professional sportsman. You got to be circumspect when something like this happens. So on the one side, I feel for him. On the other side, I don't, because he's a professional. He should know how to deal with these situations. It's not his first crash. Was the penalty too harsh? So this is where I think the comments could fill up. Part of me says, yes, I think it was too harsh. Had he just barged the marshal out the way, maybe, but he did give the oak a bit of a light little PK. Then someone on YouTube showed the clip between Aleix Espargaro and Frankie Morbidelli, where he clocked him properly. No different to this. And what did he get? A 5 grid place penalty, if I remember correctly. Might have been 10 places.
Yeah.
So in light of that, and I understand that 2 different scenarios, 2 different management in charge of the penalties, I'm going to say that I think it was harsh. It's the rules. I'm not saying that what he got was what the rule book says. And I've always been one to say, if that's what the rule says, and it's happened to my mate Marc Marquez, the rule book has got him out of poo a couple of times. Maybe not hitting anybody, which we cannot condone in any way, but where he's fallen in the first 3 laps and he can restart. But anyway, the rule says do that. You strike any official, whether it's the marshal or Carmelo Espeleta, makes no difference. So the penalty was the correct penalty, certainly harsh.
Okay, so I'm gonna agree with you on some points, and I'm gonna disagree on some points. And again, everyone in the comments, please, just feel free, have your say there, and we'll get them up. And obviously, just keep it neat and tidy, because it's one of those things that can easily just unravel itself, and everyone can go off on their own tangent, and it can turn nasty. But it's not what we want to do here. It's an open conversation. I think it is one of those, victim of circumstance kind of thing where you could look at it both ways and kind of sympathize with, and understand both ways and agree to disagree in many ways. I fully agree with you with the Bezzecchi, creating the situation by crashing. So that's fully on him. No one else. 1 lap to go or whatever it was. Bring it home in 5th. Get the job done in the sprint races. Had he up till now been able to get the job done in sprint races, the championship would already be a different picture.
Yeah.
So sprints is something Bezzecchi can't quite mentally wrap his head around. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's the fact that everyone is, on the soft tire, or in this case, Marc took the soft tire, the Ducati took the soft tire, and everyone else took the medium tire. So maybe they had that little bit of an advantage, but I agree. But there's some kind of mental block with Bezzecchi and sprint races, where he kind of just wants to get them out of the way, and I'm focused on Sunday. So, but he makes his mistakes on a Saturday. Cool. So he crashes. That's his fault. Then he gets into the gravel. This is where I want to say, I don't justify anything that Bezzecchi did. You can't do that to marshals. These marshals, a lot of them are, they volunteer, so they do it for free. They do it for the love of the sport and whatever. So I fully agree with the fact that, in general, you don't lay hands on anyone.
Yeah.
I've taught my son, if anyone lays hands on you, you blix them in back. There was a bully situation. You don't do that. But this is how I'm looking at it in that situation. First of all, I do think there needs to be a bit of a change or something with the marshals. It's great that they volunteer and stuff. That's fantastic. But MotoGP's got to a point where that was a multi-million euro motorcycle that marshal was handling, where they have a certain amount of engine limits and those things. They warm them up in the pits to a certain temperature. They finical, and it's a lot of money those marshals are dealing with. So how much qualifications, how much training do these marshals have in that situation to know, don't touch that throttle, or if the bike's still on its side, there's the kill. Show them. I know there's 16 million buttons there. This is where I sympathize with the marshal. I wouldn't know which button to press to turn that bike off. But I think, from the marshal's point of view, the handling of the bike was wrong. I know it was an accident, but it's an accident that could cost Aprilia a lot more money than what Bezzecchi's already cost them by throwing it into the weeds. But there's got to be a bit more sympathy of how they handle those motorcycles in those situations. So he grabs the bike, grabs the throttle, limits it. And I promise you, before that video even came out of showing that, because the initial video or the info that we had was Bezzecchi just murdered a marshal. And I was like, that's not Bezzecchi. Bezzecchi is not an Alacia Spargo. He's not a Martin. He's not that person. Then my mind went straight to, I bet you that marshal's grabbed a handful of throttle, and that's what's triggered thing. So first of all, from that point of view of it's an expensive piece of machinery, and the marshal handled it wrong. He did. He handled it wrong. Didn't deserve a clap for it, but he handled it wrong. The clap came because, as you said, the pressure. Bezzecchi's just gone, you moron, you've crashed sprint race, you're letting Marc, as Oli Moto said earlier, it's that pressure of, I'm letting Marc Marquez and Ducati back into this. What am I doing, stupid? While that's all going on, and he's hating life and he's hating himself, he hears his motorcycle go on rev limiter. Now, this is where I sympathize, and this is my justification for it. There's no justification for slapping, I know that, but this is my justification for it. Is that Bezzecchi, this soft-tempered kind of guy, I've always said these guys are where they are because there's a bit of arrogance to them. You don't always see it, but deep down there's a bit of arrogance that I will murder anyone. I'm the best of the best. I'm the. Some people show it, like a Martin and them show it out in the open, and then others like Bezzecchi hold it in. That wasn't just a motorcycle lying there for Bezzecchi. That was his wife. I mean, he's married motorcycle. That was his child. That is his life. That is his dream. That is his absolute everything. So I look at it from a point of view of that was like my child lying there, and someone's just gone and picked him up by the arm and like dropped him again. Or, I'm going to go murder that oak. And again, not justifying that, but in that instance, that's how Bezzecchi portrayed that whole situation. You are mishandling my life. He doesn't have a wife. He doesn't have kids. That is his life. That is his dream of becoming a MotoGP champion. So flick the switch, pushed him and murdered him. Not good. But I'm just painting the bigger picture here. you know, I don't want everyone to climb on this bandwagon that now Bezzecchi's the stud, and he's absolutely not. But he's so unlike Bezzecchi, and we could see by the apology that wasn't. I know a couple of people have put up and say, "Oh, it's a great show and well put on." That wasn't a show. I can tell you now from the many interactions I've had with Marco Bezzecchi, that was Marco Bezzecchi showing his true self. That was Marco Bezzecchi showing his vulnerability and saying, you know, Paul, we've all done it. We've all that switch has flipped in all of us where we've done stupid things. The biggest problem for these guys is, as professional athletes, it's painted for the world to see. And I agree with you. As a professional athlete, you've got to be able to control it. He hasn't been able to control it. I did also see a couple of posts where Bezzecchi has done this before when he was with VR46 Ducati, where he shoved Marshall. So he's got that deep down, that demon deep down that comes out. But I don't think we should ridicule him for it. It was a mistake. He went and humbly apologized. He did everything he could. I think the penalty is justified. To be honest, I remember talking about the Alicia Spargo hitting Morbidelli and going, that's not a 5-place. That's a pack your bags and go home. My George Portman was many things. You know, he was a hard man or whatever. But everyone knew where they stood with him. You know, if you rode the wrong way down pit lane, you loaded your bike and you went home. If you did that, you loaded your bike and you went home. So you didn't do those things. You know, so things ran. So I understand MotoGP, and that I'm glad that's why they put their foot down with a big penalty like this on the championship leader. They could have easily gone, no, they put their foot down, went, we are not handling this whatsoever. And one of the podcasts that I watched made a very good point. It's also showcasing to the world that MotoGP aren't going to stand for this kind of thing, which is good, because this has gone out on social media. This has gone to football players, to Formula One fans, to everyone. And they've just seen this rider hit a Marshall. They don't know the Bezzecchi. And then they look, you see, MotoGP and these bike riders, they're just criminals and thugs. No. So by that ban, MotoGP have painted a picture. Luca Marini and a couple of other riders were still asked, you know, in that situation now, you're going to, you know, have that in your mind. And they're like, definitely. You know, when we crash, see a Marshall, it is now implanted in our mind, don't do anything because you will just be kicked out. Cool. So, I sympathize with Bezzecchi because he put himself in that tough environment where I don't sympathize with him because of his own fault. But in that moment, I just want people to understand it wasn't a motorcycle that he was looking at. It was his life. And that's what the reactions come from. That reaction hasn't come from, I'm cool and you're a doer, I'm just going to slap you for treating my motorcycle like that. It comes from it sounds weird to say, but it comes from a loving place. Just like I would protect my child, you would protect your child. It comes from a loving place. Doesn't mean it's right. But a loving place. So I agree with the penalty. It's a big learning curve for Bezzecchi and Aprilia. You know, Rivola has had to come and stand in front of the media a couple of times now with the Martin crash in Hungary, and now again didn't defend his rider. You know, rightfully so. Again, I did agree with him in saying, well, we only appealed it because if you look at some other incidences that were saying they didn't get that kind of penalty, and Rossi and a couple of others said the same. But it was also good to see some of the riders, Carl Crutchlow, a couple of other guys, coming out in support of Bezzecchi. Even Marc Marquez didn't really go into the whole, it's Bezzecchi. Marc kind of, he almost backed him up and said, we're not even 30 years old. You think of some of the mistakes you made before you were 30. So anyway, I think penalty rights, Bezzecchi and Aprilia are the biggest losers. They've got to learn from this. Rivola has got a massive job on his hands to kind of somehow bring this team back together because it seems to be separating a bit. I think Bezzecchi will be able to reset. The big question for Bezzecchi now is how does he sort out the Saturdays, and how does he reset from that? Because no doubt if he didn't have that penalty on Sunday, he would have been in. I still don't think he would have had enough for Ogura and potentially Marc, but certainly for Pecco. But then you're still 60 points or something ahead. Right now, from 120 points to 40 points with a rider like Marc Marquez, it's just thrown even more of the weight of the world on his shoulders.
Yeah, that's the problem for Bezzecchi now, is because we know Marc can smell blood in the water. And in all fairness and in all honesty, when he came back at Mugello, Marc, I think there was, even in his mind, there was a little bit of doubt as to whether he could win this championship because of the form of both Bezzecchi and Martin. But thanks to the form of Bezzecchi and Martin, one taking himself out, one getting the penalty, through no fault of his own, Marc is suddenly only 40 points behind. So, this is motorcycle. We said it last week. We said this is MotoGP. Anything can happen.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, anything. Yes, who would have ever thought this? We would have said, maybe he crashes, breaks a collarbone, can't race, loses 25 points. But the circumstance around it is very disappointing. And what I mean by that is, me personally, should Bezzecchi not win the championship, and I think now he's really got a target on his back, but should he not win the championship, I would rather have been able to say, it's because he crashed in Brno and broke his collarbone, missed 2 races, than to say, listen, his passion caused him to clap a marshal. And I fully agree with what you've said about this whole circumstance around it. But look where it's put him. The next point I wanted to make, I remember, but maybe it was World Superbikes, did they not put a cut-off switch in the bike that the minute it was on its side, it's supposed to cut out? I can't remember, because more, especially with the rule change for this year, where you're not allowed to start your bike on the track. So if your bike does cut out, you can only start it behind the fence. So you've got to go into the service road or whatever the nearest off-track point is to restart your bike, even in qualifying and practice. So maybe they've changed that, or maybe it was a superbike rule. I thought there was a thing saying that the minute the bike was on its side, it's supposed to cut out. But what you said, Rob, so going back to the marshal training, that's also something they need to look at, because you're restricted to 7 engines per year. You can't afford an unintentional thing like the oak picking the bike up by the throttle instead of maybe grabbing it on the fork or whatever, and it revs and there's sand in there, or he revs it to the limit and it blows whatever it does. So it's a very difficult one. But once again, these are volunteers, so they're doing the best that they can do. And you can't suddenly say, okay, we'll have one marshal per corner who knows how to disengage the bike, because he might be over there and you crash over there, and they've got to run in this, so it's a very difficult one. But circumstance, I see the word there. Circumstances depicted that now, if Bezzecchi felt that he had a little bit of pressure, well, now he's got a ton of pressure on him, because, as you say, from over 100-point lead 3 races ago to now only 40, Marc only has to outscore him by 3 points per round, which, let's be quite honest, for Marc, that's doable. Never mind that there's still Jorge Martin and DJ ahead of Marc Marquez. So don't rule them out of it. I understand we're talking about Marc, and he's certainly, he's won the last 2 races. He's only going to get better, not worse, because of his shoulder injury. But don't rule out other guys in this championship just yet.
Rob Rock 91. No one thinks he's a thug. It happened and he was punished. Now time to move on. It was a slap, not a punch. Also, if it's such a no-go, then why does TNT keep showing it on replay? So listen, there's a couple of pretty much. You know what it is, Paul, and I saw from a lot of the comments from kind of the diehard MotoGP followers. That also kind of know Bezzecchi, not through necessarily face-to-face interaction that I've been lucky enough and others have been lucky enough to have, but him from watching him over the years and on TV. He's not that kind of personality, so you can make that judgment. I think it is that, it's that criticism of someone now has seen this, that they've followed MotoGP here and there now, a little bit here, and then they're seeing the social media post that went very viral of a MotoGP rider just assaulting. And, again, words can... I saw one that said MotoGP rider assaults, and you're like, for goodness sake, if it's an assault, you know what I mean? So I think that was the tentative point, and again, why MotoGP acted probably the way they did was it went onto the social world. We've got to react by being stern on this, that this behavior is not welcome. So Bezzecchi and Aprilia are the ones to pay the price. So
just on that point that someone made there, Rob, about TNT replaying it all the time. Why don't they replay over and over Bezzecchi going to that marshal on Sunday morning? Because that was such a heartfelt moment. So show the slap, and it was a very mild slap, but then keep showing that. So, okay, well, let's show this again, that he went to the oak and he showed actual remorse, actual, please, you could just see that. I mean, he's an Italian. He's going to cry when they bring his pasta, but you could see that was from the heart.
Yeah.
Yes, so a camera went with him. But why are they not re-showing that? So, but that's sensationalism. That's how journalistic sensationalism and clicks work. Show the slap, not the apology. We know that. So it's never going to happen, but we know what happened behind the scenes. And once again, credit to Bezzecchi. Took it on the chin, to be quite honest. I mean, imagine how gutted he must have felt when he got called in, or Rivolo got called in, and they were told you can't race tomorrow. I mean, if nothing else, he might have thought, oh, I know I've messed up. Maybe I'm getting a double long lap penalty, which we'll talk about, which costs you nothing at that track. But to not be able to race, that's a big kick in the teeth, eh? Rightfully so, but I'm just saying, imagine how he felt.
No, it was big, and that emotion was, a reaction to his reaction to the marshal, but it was also a reaction to the reality of what happened. And again, 100%. it's this Marc Marquez machine that's coming for him. It's not a normal. You're not dealing with a Martin who's clearly, his mind can be all over the place. You're dealing with this Marc who at 85%, I would say, is winning. You know what I mean? And you can't beat him. And he's just, Bezzecchi must have sat in that motorhome of his that night going, have I just thrown this away? Like you said, 40 points in modern day MotoGP is nothing these days. With the sprint Saturday and the race on Sunday, and with the likes of Ogura now and there, Martin, you don't know what he's going to do. Is he going to be a teammate? What team orders are going to come in? He's leaving. He's going to Yamaha. What team is he going to play? Then Pecco Bagnaia is finding a bit of form. Ducati are back in. DJ Antonio has got a point to prove. He's still in the championship. Pedro Acosta just wants to destroy everything when he's bike works. If it works, so there's all these factors, and he's sitting there. He's in that. I've always said it. You get to that point where you're just overthinking things. So Becky's gone from going into race weekends going, catch me if you can. Mark's got these problems and this damage and blah blah blah. Now he's just overthinking things. He's, as you said, he's that half that carrot's been charred that's been dangling in front of everyone, and he's got to deal with it now. So I'm very interested to see. Rivolo. I still think he's doing a fantastic job. I love how he stands in front of the camera and he takes responsibility. He defends his riders when they need to be defended. He criticizes them when they need to be as well. He doesn't sugarcoat things. So I think he's doing a good job. But man, it's got to be a tough situation. And Aprilia, it's such a weird one. I don't know if it's just the aura or something within the team. But we've seen Alessio Spargo, Morbidelli. We've seen him come into the pits and scream. At his pit crew, we've seen Martin come in and screaming. They just at most times they look like this family environment, high fives and smiles and hugs and that. But then, Paul, it has to be this massive pressure. We can sit here and talk about it all day long. That pressure of Aprilia, this tiny little company going up against the world, leading it now, potentially could win it for the first time in yonks with, a Bezzecchi who, could this be his best opportunity to win it this season, because going forward with the rule changes and who knows what's going to come of that, and like the likes of Pedro Acosta going on a Ducati and so it's a pressure cooker environment, and they've done so well to kind of disguise it with the high fives and the smiles and stuff. But then there's the reality of, listen, lads, this is up to us. We've got to make this happen. It's no one else's. Bez, you've got to finish sprint races. You cannot win a championship just by performing on Sundays. It's not going to happen. A couple of months ago, we thought it could. Now it's not going to happen. Ducati have reacted in the Ducati way. They've come back. Mark's still coming back, and he's winning doing it. DJ Antonio is a different prospect. So, I still cast my mind back to Mugello, where Aprilia was standing on the rooftop saying, "This is our house now," and I can't help but think, karma has a funny way of working, and suffering from that now. But anyway, that's painted that picture. I think we can, as a lot of commenters said, we can move on from that. Bezzecchi, it's going to be interesting to see where Bezzecchi and Aprilia go from here. They've got a lot of work to do. I want to talk about the sprint race quickly, Paul. Also, Pecco Bagnaia, seems to have found a bit of form. He's 4 podiums on the trot in the main race, picked up a sprint race, his first since, was it Sepang last year or something, like a very long time. But
Japan.
Or Japan. I love watching Pecco when he's in full flight like that. I got to be honest, when when he brakes so hard and that whole bike just floats into a corner, and he's got that, oh man, I loved watching the Pecco exercise on Saturday. It's the perfect situation. It's the perfect storm for Pecco Bagnaia. Gets the whole shot. No one in front of him. I don't have to worry about tire pressure. I don't have to worry about anything. Off I go, and off he goes in the distance and wins a sprint race. But it's great to see Pecco back in form. Ducati have found something, whatever they've done. He seems to be a lot happier on the bike, which is great, even though he's moving on to Aprilia next year. It's great to see that relationship has kind of come good, and it's not going to, I hope it doesn't end on a sour point. There's still time. It could, with the way MotoGP is going. But it was a great exercise for the sprint win. The Sunday race, led most of the race, got to a point where, as he said, I was kind of just riding like this. Mark and I weren't going anywhere. I had to manage things. I had to drop back, and I didn't have the pace for third. But it's just great to see Pecco back in the fight.
Yeah, most certainly. And I must say, watching him on Saturday, like you say, Rob, he rides the bike, I'm going to say a little bit loose, but he makes it look so easy. He really looks like he's in control. Where the minute Mark's in front, every corner, every lap, you're wondering if he's going to lose it, because he looks like he's riding 100%. And we know that he's not. But the two riding styles are almost such a contradiction on the same bike, that the one guy just makes it look easy, and yet the other guy, maybe it's because of Mark's history that anything can happen at any point. But one thing that concerned me about Pecco, and I agree with you, Saturday he looked like a hot knife through butter, just looked so easy. Sunday, to me, that he gets to that kind of half race distance, you don't think it's a fitness issue, because he gets to a point where suddenly he just stops progressing. He doesn't set fastest lap times anymore or equal. And to me, it's always been this season from half race distance onwards. Then you see a guy like if you saw Ogura when they were in the media debriefing room, man, he looked like he had just walked in there. He hadn't even been on the bike. And I know they commented, he's only 25. And Digi's end of race pace is so good. And Pecco seems to deteriorate, which was never something that he did. He was very good at 151 start, 151 finish lap. Now, so I just thought to myself, yes, he's a little bit older. I wonder if it's a bit of a fitness issue. I mean, we don't know. I just thought about it because of the fact he couldn't maintain a pace that Mark could comfortably maintain. Then Ogura got past him, and then Digi closed those last 2 laps or 3 laps. He even made a comment saying, yes, Digi was coming fast. Now, he possibly had a bit more tire drop-off because he went a bit harder at the beginning of the race. That's a management issue. But to me, I think it could be a fitness issue. And I was reading something about one of the Yamaha riders earlier, Alex Rins, just saying how, they on the limit for 22 laps, even if Yamaha's limit is not Ducati's limit. So maybe it is a little bit of a fitness issue. I don't know. Just something that I just thought it always seems to be half race distance onwards. Now the sprint race is only half distance. So he feels he can give it horns for whatever the sprint is, 20, 22 minutes. So I don't know. Could be.
I think it's more a case of, Pecco thrives when everything comes together. He needs that bike working at that. He's got a very fine line of where the bike can go. If it goes out that much of his little window, he struggles to kind of cope with it. That season, if you think about it, the season that he beat Martin, more often than not, he was in that window. That the Ducati was the ultimate MotoGP bike that was ever kind of released. Then Martin made 1 or 2 errors. The Phillip Island comes to mind. Then the season that he lost to Martin, as soon as he would get out of that, he would crash. He crashed more often than not that season. That's what lost him the title. And he definitely, it could be a fitness thing. It could be a mental / fitness thing, where both just kind of get into this defense mode. Some riders have it, where the Marks and the Digis and the Ogura proved this weekend, they can kind of just hold it through and keep going. You're absolutely right. I've never really given it much thought. I just look at it and I put it down to the fact that I think Pecco is a very meticulous rider. As every lap, right, cool. As soon as not cool.
Yeah.
And that triggers something in his mind, where Mark and some other riders can go out of that comfort zone and go, okay, well, I'll trust it. I'll trust it again next lap. And if it does it again, then I'll have to rethink things.
Yeah.
He'll do it next lap and it'll be okay and cool. And if it isn't, then he'll adjust. Whereas Pecco will overthink things. I think something will happen and he'll go, oh, gee, is it the bike? Is it me? What's happening? And you could almost see kind of let Marc through. There was no kind of trying to defend or he's kind of
fight.
He's almost mentally gone, you know what? Marc is the better rider. I'm going to let him have this, and we've said it all along. Mentally on and off track, it looks like he's given that mantle to Marc. Said, you're the number one guy on the team. Let me not hold you up, type thing. But it's a valid point. As you said, after the race, he was, Marc was also that was the most physically drained I think I've ever seen Marc. Marc's that's always been one of his strong points, and it was. And even on the last lap, he said, I was a passenger on that. I had nothing left. I kind of coasted around, and Ogura did look brand spanking new. So it's something that Pecco's got to work on. I think it is still going to be the biggest handicap of Pecco to really become a challenger. Again, he's got to kind of prove that to himself and to all of us that he can, in that situation, not let them through. As you said, in a sprint race, it's easier to do because of the limited laps. And you probably don't get so much of a regress in the bike's feelings and the tires and everything, whereas the bike changes a lot in a full race, from the tires, from the fuel load, to a lot of characteristics change there that he clearly, in his mind just can't get around. So that's going to be something that Pecco's going to have to work on, going to Aprilia for the rest of this season, and certainly at Aprilia next year. If anything's going to hold him back from becoming a 4-time world champion, it's going to be that.
And I mean, we're criticizing a guy or commenting on a guy who finished third on the weekend. It's not like he finished 18th. But it is. I think it's a point that he's got that initial, call it 1/3 from 1/3 to half race distance, the same pace as everyone else. But then there's more of a drop off with him recently than with other riders. And some guys like Digi seem to get stronger towards the end of the race, which also could just be, like you say, so he has a little bit more tire wear, the front doesn't feel as good, so he's not as confident. So, but he's going to have to work on it, without a doubt, because otherwise, he's not going to win races or championships by leading and then finishing third. It's not going to work. He's going to have to, if he's in front, he's got to stay there.
Yeah, I want to bring up this comment, Paul, that was made here by Rian VR8539 in the land of YouTube. For safety reasons, they should move that long lap penalty from where it is. Brad could have hit Martin when he joined the track again. Can't blame Martin going on the green. This is a good point, because I actually didn't make it in my notes, and it's a very valid point. It was a very big, it can be a very big talking point from the weekend. We're going to try and keep it as short and sweet as possible. Even the commentators were getting confused, because it happened in the Moto2 race with Ivan Ortola. He served the long lap penalty, and he also kind of veered over into the green a little bit, but he lost 1.2 seconds and he still went on to win the race. That's not a penalty. 1.2 seconds is not a penalty. The penalty did not fit the crowd. Same with Martin. By the time he had practiced it 3 or 4 times, he was getting his elbow down. The track at Brno, where they've resurfaced it. Another stat I looked at, Carl Crutchlow, the last time he raced at Czech Republic a couple of years ago, I think 2022 or whatever, his fastest lap time on the Honda was a 58.6. He did a 53.8 now. Resurfaced that track. And the Moto2, there was another graphic that I saw that Brad's FP1 time from last year was like a 58 or 57 something, and the Moto2 riders were faster than so resurfacing the track. Why I bring that into the conversation with the long lap, I fully agree with exactly what Rian's saying here. First of all, from the point of view, it wasn't much of a penalty. A penalty's got to be 3 seconds at least. I remember, back in South Africa, you'd pass under yellow, you'd get 10-second penalty. You jump start, 10-second or 30-second penalty. Your life's over. It's over. You go from first to 10th type thing. Or you used to get ride-through penalties. We used to lose 4 days. Now, 1.2, it's not a penalty. But so that's my first argument. My second argument is exactly what he says from a safety point of view. So even the commentators were like, oh, he's got onto the green. That's going to be another long lap penalty. No, long lap penalty is complete. Now, as far as I know, and Oli Moto and very educated people in the comments, please. I actually wanted to go try and research the rule, but I haven't. They were saying the rule says to complete the long lap penalty, you've got to avoid the green coming out of the corner, which Martin happily took as much of that green as he
The
possibly
green on the inside.
Okay.
The green on the inside.
But why would there be green on the inside?
Yeah, there is, for whatever reason, so that I presume you can't shortcut.
Okay, yeah, but surely they're coming out. Okay, but this is why that corner just mesmerized me, because if the rule does say you're not allowed touching the green coming out, which the commentators also thought, in that particular corner, you can't expect those guys to come around and then literally come back onto the curb where other riders are coming. So I would want them to go on the green to kind of give that little bit of space to come back on. So it was a very dangerous environment. So Rian, if anyone in the comments can kind of have your say, of course, and then just give a little bit more context to that, because it did seem very odd to me that both Ortola and Martin didn't get penalized, and I actually don't know what the rule is.
Well, we spoke about it last week. That's no penalty. That was just an inconvenience. But clearly, Aprilia had spoken to race direction and said, let us show you, if he exits the long lap penalty without going onto the green, he comes straight basically into the line, and he'll be going a lot slower because he can't run it wide. When he cut in front of Brad, which I think was a dodgy move by all strokes of the imagination, but he was already up to speed. So that's the one. Imagine if he was going 20 k's an hour slower. That would have been chaos. But then the commentators on our feed, which is the MotoGP feed, said, you got 4 chances to touch the green in the race. So he knew that. So Martin knew that. So he said, I'll take my chances with the 2 from my 2 long lap penalties, because the rest of that track seemed to be not one where going out of onto the green was too much of an issue. So I think but I honestly think that Aprilia must have gone to race direction and informed them, because he was racing that like a proper racing line. Like you say, getting his elbow down, just flat out that turn. He had so much confidence. So, but certainly the point is, where was the penalty to him? You know, as you say, Rob, for what he did last weekend, he should have had a 6-second penalty. He had if it took Ortola 1.2 seconds, it took Martin 1 second at worst. So so that's something they need to look at. But with regards to joining the track, he took a gap with Brad. Honestly, I think that was probably more dodgy than Bezzecchi giving the marshal a bit of a warm up.
No, you know, this is the other thing, and Brent Strat 9952 in YouTube, he was given permission to go onto the green to get back on the track safely. So thank for exactly what you said, which I agree with on that. But then, you know, if the MotoGP,
what's the point?
Well, exactly. Well, then what is the point? Then you've got the long lap penalty in the wrong place there. There's a couple of other parts on that Brno track where I could easily see you could have a. Anyway, it's they definitely need to relook at that, because the punishment didn't fit the crime. And you know, just quickly going back to that, Paul. So yes, Bezzecchi gets banned from the race meeting for physically slapping a marshal. You know, then you think of the likes of Ogura taking out Pedro Acosta at Catalunya, and there's mistake kind of takeouts, and then there's like, listen, you knew what you were doing there, you took him out. We've seen it in all the classes. Then you kind of look at that and you go, does the punishment fit the crime type thing as well? You've literally, you talk about safety, and I mean, this was like a little slap.
Correct.
This is Ogura. Got, you know, anything could have had. So I know this is us really diving into that, and I don't want to get too much, but this is where MotoGP have to be careful, and this is, I think, where Rivola was kind of touching upon when he did the appeal, was, you know, some penalties are like, he wouldn't have mentioned the Martin now, but exactly, Martin goes into turn 1, nearly severs 3 heads. He gets a 2-second penalty. You know what I mean? And this, and the grid penalty doesn't do much for me, because you can still make up a load of positions on the grid penalty. There's got to be a firm up. You know, I know a ride through penalty is all much over. That is too much to ride through, but I don't know. Start at the back of the grid and wait 5 seconds type thing. You know.
Well, I think that's the next thing is, you know, not a ride through penalty. Start at the back of the grid. And, you know, skip one row. So the last row of riders, skip a row, and then you start from back there. The exact opposite of Miller, wherever it was, he started in front and everyone started 10 rows behind him. You know, that kind of situation, because like we're saying here, Rob, and we're beleaguering the point. You know, Martin had a 2-second penalty. He took 4 riders out. Yes, did he manage to finish? But the penalty for that crime, he will be. They were even talking on the Oxley Bond podcast saying, well, if riders are going to look to cause transgressions, all they're going to do is see what's the racetrack coming up. Oh, it's Brno. Well, that's okay. The long lap penalty is 1 second. I'll wipe out half the field in turn one.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
They're going to have to look at it. There's no doubt about it.
But look, they've made, other big news before we carry on with the kind of rider reviews is that came out straight after the race weekend is a couple of big things. Front ride height devices banned from the Dutch TT. I think most of us, if there's anyone in the comments that doesn't agree with it, let it be known. But I think majority of us would kind of agree with that. Don't want it there. Let's go old school in a way. Let's, may the best man with the best left hand kind of get into turn one first. So that's I think one good decision that I'm happy to see. The distance between grid rows extended from 9 meters to 12 meters. So now obviously spread out a lot more, which is not a bad thing. What that's also going to do is just make qualifying even more vital because one thing that I noticed that we'll get upon Brad and KTM a little bit later, but like in the sprint race, go look back at it. After the first lap in the sprint race, Brad must have been 4 seconds behind Pecco after one lap. That's subsequent to where he started. He's starting 1.5, 2 seconds, back in row 6 or where it was. But it just sets you up in 4 seconds. It's game over. Game over. A little bit more manageable because everyone's a little bit more tentative at the start of the main race with the full fuel load and stuff. But anyway, so it's gonna separate things, and I don't know how much of a difference that'll actually make because by the time you get to Catalonia turn one, are they still going to be 12 meters apart? Or I don't know. But anyway, that's what it is. And manufacturers limited to 6 bikes from 2028, which I think is fair. I mean, it's pretty much what they are now. They just put it in writing, to be honest. So that was the deal signed. A couple of those safety things have been brought in by MotoGP. So I think after this weekend, if they aren't, they're stupid not to be. But they'll be sitting and certainly reviewing the long lap penalty at Brno, and then certainly reviewing kind of the penalty. We've got to find a fair punishment for
a fair punishment. Yeah, correct. So that regardless of what track you're at or what track you're going to, for the same offense committed, you get the same penalty. So they're certainly going to have to look at that. So I think it's good that they're looking now at safety as more than lip service, because there can be serious ramifications to some of these crashes that we've seen. Fortunately, there hasn't been. But I think it's a good thing. And we'll see this weekend, so at least they've made that decision immediately with regards to the whole shot devices. And we'll see this weekend how much of a difference it actually makes.
Let's get on to Ogura, Paul. We've said some great things about Ogura this season. He's certainly come on as a MotoGP rider after his rookie season last season. He's this meticulous samurai sword of a rider, has made mistakes. As I said, the pass on Pedro Acosta at Catalunya. Also, look at his character, very remorseful, went straight to, it's not his kind of thing, but he's in this competitive pressure cooker bubble now, and this is what happens when you get into that environment now. It's about the fractions, as we've spoken about many, many times in MotoGP, and what looks like a gap may not necessarily be a gap because of the environment and where you are. If he was dicing for 10th place, that gap would have been different because that rider's going a lot slower than Pedro Acosta's going. So he's now a front runner in MotoGP. I'm not saying permanently, he's still got to kind of put a longer stretch on, but consistently up there now. Brno looked fantastic. You look at what was the qualifying record? It was a 53. I mean, they smashed it. Everyone I think every single person on that grid just about smashed the lap record at some time. But Ogura went into the 50s, 1 minute 50 bracket at Brno, which is just, I remember Sheridan and them doing in World Superbikes, like if you broke the 2 minutes, you were doing well, geez, 59 at Brno. Gee, are you 1 minute 50? So anyway, Ogura, with all this happening at Aprilia, kind of just went, you guys do your thing. Ralph Fernandez is also thrown into that Aprilia thing with being taken out and this and this and this and this. But Ogura is like, cool, you guys do that. I'm just going to slowly go about my business. And it was a great weekend for Ogura. You could see how devastated he was at not winning the race. I love his comment afterwards, like, Mark, can you just like let me win one? There's a respect for rider there, but there's certainly that inner arrogance, that I speak about, that's slowly starting to come out. And this Ogura, it's telling him that, right, be the nice guy, but it's also time to be that guy that, we can go win this now. And it was great to see. It was a great performance all weekend.
And Rob, we've been saying it for probably the whole of this season that he needs to qualify, he needs to get straight into Q2. Well, look what he did. He got into Q2 straight away, got pole position, didn't pull off the win, but I'm going to say that's experience. As much as he's a wily campaigner, been around the block a few times, it's only his second year in MotoGP, and it's only his first year running consistently in the front.
Yeah.
Now that's a thing of that self-belief.
Yes.
So he had that with Moto2. He carried it through initially last year in MotoGP. Then he was hit with some big crashes. And, then you get hurt and you take a step back, and he's regrouped. I think the fact that the Aprilia has improved, and he's certainly taken stock of that improvement and put it to good use, his style allows him to just be smooth as butter. You watch him, he's silky smooth. He always has been, but he's kind of the epitome where they show those slow motions of Martin right off the bike, scraping everything. Ogura he's not there for show. Not to say Martin is, that's just how he rides, but he's kind of the exact opposite. But I think he just needs that self-belief to, he knows he's there. Now he just needs to say, I belong here. And we've said it with guys like Alex Marquez last year, Digia this year. You need to do it all the time. You need to do it all the time. And I think he's getting to that point. Oli Moto's comment, quite valid, but when the competition is 8 and 9 years older than you, then 25 is quite young, because what Mark's 33 or 32. So I think Ogura's really, he's bought into this thing that I can do it, I belong, and now he must just keep doing it. And I think he will. He doesn't seem to get flustered. He made a silly mistake in Barcelona. He also learns from that. So I think he's realized when you're running, like you say, Rob, running with the first 5 versus running with 10th to 15th, different league, eh? And I think he's bedding himself into this position to, he wants to be there. If Bezzecchi can win and Martin can win, why the heck can't he? And he's starting to say, okay, well, boys, here I am. Don't only look at Raul Fernandez, or don't only look at, I'm here too. But he does it in such a quiet way that he almost, I don't want to say slips through the cracks. It's the exact opposite. Suddenly he's there. And once he's there, you don't just get rid of him. I mean, even at the end of that race, he kept that gap at 0.6, 0.8. That was no breathing room for Marc. And if you saw Marc through the last turn, he lost the front there. You got to be quite honest. He was a little bit fortunate, eh? And that's the pressure that he kept it there all the time. So I think fantastic and excellent. I think he was rider of the weekend.
Yeah, I fully agree. As rider of the weekend, it's a good thing for Aprilia. No doubt Rivolo will be saying that we need you up there, especially now. If we can put another Aprilia in the fight and between, but again, this is the kind of headache that Rivolo is going to have to deal with. It's great having the Martin, the Bezzecchi, and the Ogura up there, but it's again now managing this expectation. Ogura is looking for his first one in MotoGP. Let's say, as Oli Moto pointed out earlier, they're going to Assen, where Bezzecchi, it could be a question mark track for him. But let's just use Assen as a guideline. They go there. Now, Ogura is leading both the sprint and the main race ahead of Bezzecchi, and he takes those points, or Bezzecchi is third and eyes ahead of him either way. You're taking more points away from Bezzecchi and Aprilia to fund towards a Marquez if he's ahead of them. So it's great having that, and he'll be wanting to say, all right, listen, get there, ruffle the feathers of Marc. We need as many riders to ruffle. Marc doesn't have his feathers ruffled, but we've got to keep trying. But it's the flip side of, okay, well, Ogura is also, he's off to Yamaha. Him and Martin are off to Yamaha. How much of a role are they going to play? Are they going to be team players? Ogura, I can certainly see a lot more than Martin, if I'm being honest. Ogura is not miles out of the fight. If you look what's just happened now with 120 points down to 40 points, you can't count Ogura out of it. Although you wouldn't count him as a favorite as Bezzecchi, Martin, or certainly Marc Marquez. But these are the kind of challenges that come with being one of the top teams now, and that's, as I said, we've said the last couple of shows, and I've mentioned in this show, that's where Aprilia are really going to have to pull up their socks and find a way to manage this all, because it's great that you've got this fast motorcycle and all these fast riders, but where do they all fit in, and how does it all fit in? And that's what they're finding out at the moment. So anyway, brilliant from Ogura, was fantastic to see. Another note someone mentioned earlier, Wayne Taylor said, I hope Ogura doesn't go to Yamaha and kind of just get lost. Here we go. I really hope Yamaha doesn't ruin I's career. He's a very decent talent. It's a brilliant signing for Yamaha, Paul. If you look at it, as you said, that smooth samurai style, the communication levels there now, Japanese to Japanese, there's a little bit more of a connection there. I is a very meticulous rider. He's not gonna. Yeah, I think he's got the mentality strength over like a Fabio Quartararo, who wants it right now, and if it's not, I'm not going to put in the work. I'm not a test rider, and Fabio's come out and said that to his credit. I'm not a test rider. He's not a test rider. I think Ogura's got a little bit more of that patience to be able to try and find a way to make it work. So from that point of view, Yamaha are really getting a brilliant asset. Looking on the flip side of it, there's the new rookie this season who put in another great performance. The results weren't really there. Crashed out of the sprint race while he was right up there, but starting to show true MotoGP credibility, and that was Diego Moreira. At one stage was top Honda rider yet again, and showcasing that MotoGP is in very, very good hands. If we're worried, okay, great that Marc Marquez has signed this new deal until 2028, which we'll touch upon when we talk about him a bit later. But you think of that and you think, oh God, we lost Rossi, we're going to lose Marc. What, Pecco and them are great, but are they? And you look at the likes of and Diego Moreira and Quiles coming, and the Costas, the MotoGP is in good hands. And looking at Moreira again, looking more and more like a MotoGP rider every single lap.
Yeah, absolutely. And the commentators did say, okay, but he's following to get the lap time. Listen, that's being clever, so you got to find that benchmark. You got to find that reference point. And instead of him, I mean, if he's doing it, why is Marini not doing it? Why, if it works? Maybe their style doesn't depict that that's what they need to do. But yeah, I certainly think he was top Honda, got straight into Q2, really looking good on the bike. So I think it's a good, like you say, Rob, MotoGP's in good hands. And when people had a little bit of, I don't want to say doubt, I had doubts about him going to Honda. I thought, listen, maybe it's not but maybe it's the right bike to learn on, because the weight of expectation is a little bit lower, and he's kind of outperforming the expectation. So I think as a rookie, doing a fantastic job. Touch wood, hasn't had any big crashes, and let's hope it stays like that. I think he's just going from strength to strength, getting more confident. Certainly belief. I'm a big thing in this belief thing. Now he's starting to feel at one with the bike. It takes a bit of an adjustment, and he's really settling into the role and doing himself proud, remembering that he's got a part-timer as his teammate, because his actual teammate, who was, I'm presuming, was supposed to guide and lead him forward, is out injured, which, that happens. So yeah, I think he's doing a fantastic job. But I do think if there's anyone who'll give him good support, it would have been Cal Crutchlow, because he's been around the MotoGP block a few times. So, but he doesn't have the pace, where Moreira needs someone like Zarco to be able to sit down and say, okay, this is where we're going. This is what, there you're good. Here, so he's on a little bit on the back foot with Zarco not being there, but he certainly hasn't let it get to him. And he's really every week better. So yeah, now he just needs to have the good start and keep it, within reason. He's not going to run fifth or sixth and stay there, but, try and stay as close as he can to a Pedro Acosta or whoever it might be. But certainly big ups to him, really looking good on the bike.
Ogura is doing the right thing in taking a factory ride at Yamaha. He won't get one at Aprilia and won't get the same backing as the factory riders there. 100% correct. And I think that, it's easy to sit back here and say, why would you take a crappy Yamaha over a good Aprilia? There is that factory contract money, first of all, that comes with it, that support that comes with it. And as Olimoto is saying, he would have looked 5 years into the future and gone, well, Pecco Bagnaia is coming in, Bezzecchi's there, it's an Italian-run company, it's where am I going to fit into this? Whereas at Yamaha, it's Japanese, good money. And so absolutely right there, Olimoto. I couldn't agree with you more. Paul, let's move on to it because I know people always wait for it. We kind of delay it as much as we can because it's a very hard topic and it just feels like it's Groundhog Day every time we talk about it. But the real elephant in the room is KTM self-cancelling, ... Brink Heinemann 6571. Now, Paul, I normally kick off this conversation in particular with Brad and stuff, so we'll talk about the KTM conversation. But I'd love to hear yours, everyone in the comments as well. Let's get going, get those fingers warmed up and get typing. Give me your analysis and your thought process about the Brad Binder and KTM this past weekend.
Yeah, Brad has been disappointing. It's a track he's won at, yes, and that's going back a few years when the KTM was still I'm going to say a Brad Binder bike. It certainly isn't at the moment. We don't get to see too much of him, so unfortunately there's not a lot of, Pedro gets a lot of the airtime that KTM gets, and rightfully so. He's consistently in the top 4 or 5, and he seems to ride the bike. I'm going to say almost like Quartararo was riding the Yamaha towards the end of last year, where every lap this is the lap. Yeah, there's no, where the bits we see of Brad, he seems to be riding the bike reserved. We discussed it last week, where we felt that he'll ride it to that point and no further, where Pedro's prepared to go further than that. Now, whether that's right or wrong, whether our summarization of this is even close to the truth, I have no idea. Just seems like Brad he's in a spot where, and definitely things with Phil Marin seem to be gelling, but it doesn't seem like they moving the goalposts forward, and that's what we'd like to see. Then you get Pedro Acosta, who he just seems to be a phenomenon on a bike that's not performing, because if you look at Bastianini, yes, he was a little bit ahead of Brad, and Vinales, who he still believes he's the fastest oak on the track, Vinales, but he just believes that, but he cannot show it. So I think KTM are at a point now where they really stuck, because they got one guy who is a hell of a lot faster than 3 guys who are, and those 3 I think are the actual benchmark of KTM, because they're always in and around each other. It's not like Pedro and then 3 places back is Brad, and then 3 places back is Bastianini, and then it's Pedro in 4th, 5th, 3rd, wherever he is. And then the other KTM's hovering around about 12th, 13th, 14th. So very difficult. I wish I knew what the answer was. I really, it just seems like I don't know if they've got no direction, if they've got too much direction, if they only concentrating on Pedro, which would be a mistake, but we know that's how it works. They look after the guy who's getting the results. To me, it's just a situation that week after week after week, it's kind of a repeat and rinse and repeat, nothing seems to be, I'm going to say changing. That's probably the wrong word, because lots is changing, but I don't know. I think they're stuck in a point where nobody knows how to move this forward, but Pedro can deliver because he just seems to be able to ride the bike when it goes harder than anybody out there.
It is, as you said, that rinse and repeat. It is Groundhog Day. I was thinking of what to say on the show about I just feel like I could copy and paste what we said last week and the week before. That just feels where it is. I agree with you with the Phil Marin, because I know when I was with Brad at Le Mans, he said, the Phil Marin's great, and KTM, to their credit, made that change because they said it was great that him and the previous guy were best mates and but that's not always the recipe for success. You need to challenge each other. We need a guy to come in here and say, "Shut up, Brad." We've got to do, just to ruffle the feathers and get something going. They made that choice. They made it with a perfect guy in Phil Marin, 2-time World Superbike champion with Top Rack Razgarioglu. But of course, he had to come into this very deep pool that is MotoGP and learn the Michelin tires. It's so frustrating for me, Paul, and I'm sure for a lot of Brad Binder fans, is if this was just 1 year later, if this Phil Marin change happened next year with the 850s on the Pirelli tires, completely, for me, I firmly believe will be a completely different picture. Phil Marin's now dealing with Pirellis. I think the WP suspension is going to be more suited to, and the KTM chassis is going to be more suited to the Pirelli tires and the less aero and everything. But anyway, it's where we are. I watched a lot of Brad Binder I turned into a fanboy last week, and I watched a lot of the documentaries, and I watched those 60 Checkers 60 adverts, where he's with Oratile Fire takes him to Red Star, that one where he's 60 rider, and he rocks up to some guy's house and delivers him, and the guy's like, look, it's Brad Binder. And I just looked at those reactions, and I was like, there's a superstar here that has done our country very proud, and we will always be proud of him. Then I also watched the races, the Brno, where he won, for the first time for KTM, and how he managed that. Yes, people will always go back to, and it's a valid point. You can't argue it, but it was a circumstances race. There was low grip, and it was about managing it, but you still had to do it against the best in the world. Rossi was there, Dobby was there. As a rookie, and he did it best. He listened to his team, who said to him, don't do anything stupid with the tires. Get that bike upright as quickly as possible and go. And he did it. He managed it. He won. And then his second one. Oh, yeah, but it was also circumstance that he stayed out in the wet while everyone else went. Yeah, but he did it. It was pouring with rain on slicks, and he did it. And he won the race. So, yes, did he? Because people always have the argument with him, but he never won an outright race. He never, beat a Marc Marquez one-on-one and a Pecco Bagnaia one-on-one. Yeah, you could argue that point. But anyway, he's a MotoGP winner, forget it. Then I watched some other races where he pushed Pecco Bagnaia and Jorge Martin at Indonesia. He was the top KTM. I watched all these, and there's a lot of them. Brad Binder's MotoGP career, there's a really good highlights reel. Yes, I know it's nowhere near some of the other riders with the wins and the podiums, but there's this great highlight reel of this guy just digging deep on this package that wasn't quite there, kind of doing what Pedro Acosta's doing now. Brad was doing this for KTM a couple of years ago. And, it feels like they've kind of forgotten that. Pit Barra's comments where Pedro Acosta tested the 850 bike yesterday, and he shouldn't because he's signed for Ducati. So, but Pit Barra said Pedro Acosta is the fastest KTM rider we've ever had. So we let him. And I sat there and I went, Jesus, but did you have to say ever?
Yeah.
Did you have to? That's just like taking the other three, especially Brad, who's committed his life to KTM.
Yeah.
And they've been, listen, it's a two-way street. They've financially looked after him. They've given him the career. I understand that. But ever, if you want to look at it, okay, cool. Yeah, he is, but he hasn't won a race.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you really want to be nitpicky, but I don't argue the fact that Pedro Acosta is the better rider. I put my hands up and I'll say that. I think Brad Binder will say that himself. But I just look at that. When I heard that comment, I went, and I go back to this comment here from CP Boards. Does Brad get an inferior bike? And my answer to that is, yes, I do. I think he has a slightly inferior bike. Is it as far off the pace as it is? Maybe not. I think it could be more competitive, if I'm being honest. I think but I think it's a situation, and I saw a bit of it at Le Mans. Imagine, Paul, going to work every day somewhere where you're not wanted, where you're over. It's no more hugs and kisses. It's no more welcome. It's no more come in. It's just sit in the corner, whatever you do it. You know what I mean? Just the energy's gone, and I think Brad's just deflated. And it must be hard because Bastianini's MotoGP future is secure. And he's been a very good MotoGP rider. There's no doubt about it, Bastianini, but he hasn't overachieved. He was in factory Ducati and didn't do much. Climbed on the KTM and hasn't done much. Yes, he's beating Brad in the odd race, but not by miles. Brad's on him. If he was beating Brad by miles, I would say sure, but Brad's still right there. Championship points wise, they right by but he's got a ride, but Brad doesn't. So I look at it and I just go, when I heard that comment from Pitt, it was kind of the nail in the coffin for me that Brad's going to work. And I'm very lucky that I've got a great work environment, that I wake up every day and I want to go and work as hard as I can to achieve. I want to make a difference, and I want to make the company better, and I will work as hard as I need to and sacrifice family, everything, whatever I need to make that happen. And I have a very understanding family. Great. Imagine not having that feeling, but you still have to do it.
Yeah.
And this is MotoGP. We've just spoken about the pressure cooker environment where it is, you have to be at the top of your game. And Brad's nowhere near it, and you can see it. I mean, I watched, like I said, some of those classic races. And it again goes to the argument of, I watched those classic races, it was him versus Morbidelli at that Brno race. It was him and Morbidelli in various other races. Current MotoGP certainly has impacted a lot of riders. And this is another notch that goes under this belt of why Brad's not performing, I think, is this evolution of MotoGP with the Michelin tires, which are very one-directional. They're very Marc Marquez kind of one-lined, and that's the MotoGP. If someone could sculpt out a MotoGP rider, they would say that one-directional, one line, none of this out-of-shape business, none of this. Boom, Pedro Acosta, Marc Marquez, Marco Bezzecchi. Brad Binder wasn't those things. Brad Binder was the old school. I'm gonna just grab this thing and just put it.
I'll show you.
And it was and it was a beautiful thing to watch. And I remember at that time when performances started slacking and he wasn't kind of challenging the guys, we were all saying, he's got to cut out that sliding. He needs to be more one directional because that's where MotoGP is going. And the likes of him, Morbidelli, Rins to a point, Miller. They just haven't, they've been impacted the most by this change in MotoGP. So it's all these things combined that is causing Brad and the situation for KTM. Look, KTM aren't in a great place either. KTM, as a couple of people point out, KTM are in a terrible place. It's disguised by Pedro Acosta. Week in, week out, it's disguised. But this disguise comes down as it did at Catalunya, where it nearly caused, what it did. Pedro Acosta now again on the last lap. It's causing. But anyway, it's Groundhog Day. I hope it gets better. I can't see it getting better anytime soon, which is even more of a frustration. I just hope Brad's obviously going through the contract talks at the moment. Not being involved in the test yesterday kind of tells you exactly all you need to know. He's definitely not going to be on KTM. If he was, he would have been on the bike instead of Pedro Acosta. The only ride that realistically is left now is potentially an LCR Honda ride if Zarco doesn't come back. Would Brad even be on that list? I don't know. So it's horrible. I was sitting downstairs with my mom, my son, and my wife and my daughter just talking about it. And my mom was asking about Brad. And it just dawned on me that this is the MotoGP we live in, where at 32 years old, this highly talented supreme rider that could be it. If he doesn't take a World Superbike ride, which I don't know if he will or won't, or go to Moto America, I don't know. I don't think so. Could that be it? Then I was starting to. Then my mind goes off, and is going back to Moto 2 such a bad thing, and potentially trying to win there? But then you're like, it's unrealistic. Even if he wins in Moto 2, will he get the opportunity to go back in MotoGP? I don't think so. So it's sad. You start thinking all of this, and you think how it impacts us. Thinking about it, can you imagine the actual guy in that position, a la Brad Binder? So it must be hard. It must be a very hard situation for Brad. And I just, I'd love to just give him a cuddle and tell him what a hero he actually is. Like I said, I turned into a proper fanboy. Great highlights reel. So if it is over, he's got a lot to be proud of, and we as a nation have got a lot to be proud of. Saying that from you.
Absolutely, Rob. And as you say, watching some of those, and they've been showing quite a lot on social media of his Brno win coming into Brno. And I mean, he is proper. Make no mistake, he is proper. The other thing that you didn't mention, which is also something that I think needs to be taken into account, it's very easy for us to sit here and analyze, and I think we try and speak positive about it and find the good, and we don't slate him. But every morning when he gets up and he reads social media, remember, he's the 1% of the 1%ers riding in MotoGP, racing bikes at the highest level. But there'll be some oak with a comment about how cuck he is and how useless he is. And not just Brad, but for Brad now, that's why sometimes he needs to take a back step towards social media, where some people are saying, but he's got no social media presence. I wouldn't have one if I had some oak telling me how to do my job, who's not at the pinnacle of his job. Different story if it's the top oak at wherever coming and commenting. But we, as I'm going to say, regular people doing regular jobs, don't have the whole world checking up on us every day and pinpointing what we've done wrong and what we could change and how much better they are. So there's that outside influence as well. So I think it must be, for Brad, who he knows 100% he's not getting the results he's capable of, but they clearly don't have a direct path to how to fix it. And that must be the frustrating thing. It's very easy if you say, a la Marc Marquez, okay, well, let's go take the 2 screws out my arm and then I'll be fine. It's not the bike. And he is okay. Brad's situation's not that. And neither is Bastianini. And I'm even going to throw Vinales in the mix, as much as I don't particularly like him and don't think he deserves a place in MotoGP anymore. But their problem is not just a quick fix of let's do A, B, and C and we'll be able. They don't know how to fix it. And that's the problem. Like you said, their results are way better than they should be because of Pedro Acosta. The rest of them are floundering at best. And, it's easy to comment and say, oh, Brad, you no good, haven't won a race, no podiums. These guys are giving 100% all the time. You don't see Brad quitting. But unfortunately, whatever they're doing, they don't know how to move it in the direction they would want. That's as clear as mud for all of us to see, because KTM was no longer, 3 seasons ago, the KTM was a podium-winning machine consistently. And now it's, Pedro's there, but, if he does get on the podium, we know that it's through sheer grit, determination, and due to him, not to the bike, because look at all the mechanical issues they're having. So clearly, and it's KTM, you don't see the Yamaha breaking down. You don't see the Honda, the Dukes, the Aprilias. Yeah, maybe one every now and again, but Aprilia's kind of one every weekend, if not 2. How many issues has Brad had where they, the clutch this, Pedro at Mugello, Barcelona, now this weekend. So there's definitely all is not well in the KTM camp, no matter how people want to sugarcoat it or apportion blame or whatever the thing is. Things are not well in their camp. And you're quite right, Rob. Next year's a clean slate. If only someone would put Brad on a bike and let him, wipe the slate clean, off you go. I think it would make an immense difference, but it doesn't look like that's going to be an option.
I think this change for MotoGP couldn't have come at a better time for KTM. They really need it. And, touching upon what you said earlier, Brad does. He digs deep. That's one thing you'll always get, is you'll get that lion kind of attitude. As Guidotti always said, he's a lion, The downside of that is this guy that's giving his absolute all, that's 10th and 11th place, which is the sad reality of it all. It's so frustrating. Ray Stephen with a great comment here. I'm bending my broken back praying Brad Binder can get a track house right. Team for that matter. Unfortunately, that's not going to happen. As Ollie Motor said, if you were Steiner and looking at riders for Tech 3 in 2027, would you want Binder or Vinales based on form? Surely if you're giving 2-year deals out, surely younger riders are more appealing. And that's exactly Steiner's thought process. He's come out and he said a rookie rider, and looks like it's going to be Senna Aegis in that seat. The second seat is still up for debate. Luca Marini is the latest name that has now been mentioned there. But Brad and Vinales are slowly kind of moving out of that conversation. It is, the KTM. There was another good comment here regarding the KTM. Where is it? Unfortunately, KTM has ruined Brad's career. They were good to him. It said this one here, Paul, and it's kind of touching upon what you said just now about how 3 years ago the KTM was good. The KTM was more competitive bike when Brad was doing well on it than it is now. Acosta is the best rider they've ever had on the bike, and it's come at the wrong time. They've gone backwards. So,
no doubt.
I think KTM, and that's why these mechanical gremlins are coming in. You said it earlier. They've reached the ceiling. They're trying to extract something that's actually just not there. Pedro Acosta trying to extract something that's not there. Brad's riding this reality of it's not there.
Yeah.
So why must I go risk life and limb for something that's not there?
Yeah.
And
just cannot happen.
I'm not going to even be rewarded for it. Financially or anything. Pedro Acosta's got a lot less to lose than a Brad Binder does at this time. It's a very frustrating conversation. I feel for Pedro Acosta because he certainly is a rider that deserves to be challenging for world titles. He's a rider that deserves. Someone put earlier, Ogura is going to get a win before Pedro Acosta does. Talking about Pedro Acosta having to deal with this seeming Furman Alfa win, Ralph Fernandez win, and everything, but. Yeah, KTM, they need this clean slate. They need it desperately. There were times from the 850 test put out there. I'm not too sure how accurate they are, because apparently it was a closed doors test.
Yeah.
And now people had stopwatches somewhere, whether they were listening on the outside by sound or I don't know, whatever. But just having a look at those times, the KTM wasn't miles off. The 2026 test, the KTM did a 154.3, and the fastest race lap by Pedro Acosta was a 53.5. So 0.8 of a second off, whereas you look at the Aprilia, the 850 did a 53.9, the race pace was 53.2, Ducati 54 dead, 1000cc time 53.1. So I thumbsuck that. I don't know how much of that I believe. Someone taking advantage of clickbait there, but it is. I think it needs to come sooner rather than later for KTM, and it's such a pity that Brad Binder is not going to be there, unfortunately. Speaking about Vinales, ending off the KTM conversation, I'm with you. On the Friday, I read his comments where he's like, the bike's starting to come to me. I'm the fastest KTM rider. I was the fastest KTM. I was like, okay, and then and you're like, listen, you can't take his confidence away from him. The self-belief in the guy is quite remarkable. But then you look at it and you go, how the guy's even in the conversation? He's Oli Moto mentioned there that he came back early, from injury. I think that injury is everlasting. If it hasn't kind of healed itself by now, that is some serious damage. If Marc Marquez has been in and out of hospital, I think 6 times since Vinales had his injury and come back and winning races. Okay, on a Ducati, I know that. But Vinales was at a competitive point before that injury, but he's nowhere near that. Obviously, the KTM's taken a step back. I know that. But credit to Vinales for the self-belief. But, I sometimes think he's wearing slightly different goggles than the rest of us.
But I think he's been like that his whole career. And I've said it many times, but I just think that he's got this self-belief, or I don't know if he just BS's in his own head about how he's going to beat everybody and how good he is. But if the injury, Oli Moto saying that he's come back from injury, yes, 100% he has. But then use Alex Marquez as an example. Alex arrived this weekend. He had a fairly good Friday by the standards of the injuries that he sustained. He realized that it's going to do him he's not going to win. It's going to do him no good to run around and he probably would have run around in 8th position, more or less. Rather take a week off, recover a little bit more and see how it goes. I presume he'll be at Essen this coming weekend. So is that not a more mature attitude than saying, listen, I'm sore and I'm injured, but you know what, I'll give it my best shot. I don't know. I'm on the fence with that. I'm just seeing Oli Moto's comment and now talking and saying, surely Vinales should just say, okay, and it's a bit late now. He should have done it 4 races ago. Said, yeah, I'm okay, but I'm not great. Let me sit out another week. It's going to make no difference. He was never going to win the championship anyway. So, I don't know. And as we've discussed, Rob, the last few shows, why his name is even being bandied about, I have no idea. Crazy. So whether he just has the right management or he can bamboozle, that's it. I think if Brad could get a 1-year deal, that to me would, reset 1-year deal and take it from there. But it's not. It doesn't look like it's going to happen. But going back to Maverick, how he's on the list of names, I just don't understand it. Any person in their right mind would say, listen, we can see what we get with Brad Binder. We don't know what we get with Maverick. That would be my criteria.
Yeah. Good comment, Jeff, from Hamath Kupala. What if KTM is only what if? And that has been KTM's entire campaign is what if, what if WP, what if you made the chassis change earlier, what if, and I just don't know what KTM is at the moment. At one stage they were a fast motorcycle, because of everything. At one point they could, just brake harder and later than anyone else. Doesn't seem like they have that. So I just don't know what KTM is at the moment. Sadly, it's I don't know. They do. They need that fresh kind of clean slate to kind of get things going again. Just a lot of great comments about Brad just desperate to try and stay in. I can tell you now, Raul Fernandez, from what I hear, has re-signed with Trackhouse. That'll be Ralph Fernandez and Enea Bastianini in Trackhouse and look, after now the MotoGP teams have signed over the weekend, we should be hearing all the rider announcements coming out soon. We've had Marc Marquez come out; he's committed to 2028, which is great. Marc Marquez back in the championship is brilliant. Good commitment there. At one stage we were all, me included, thinking, could this be a 2-year contract? He's going head to head with Pedro Acosta next year and the year after. I do think that is a statement piece, though, Paul, in saying he's pretty much committed the rest of his MotoGP future to Ducati, and we won't be seeing this reuniting with Honda that so many people were saying that could possibly happen.
Yeah, look, I think there was a 1% chance that it could happen. But honest opinion, I think we'll see Marc see out this new contract, so end of 2028. Regardless of what has happened, I can't see him carrying on. I don't think he'll do like a Rossi, who was competitive, but the last 4 or 5 years, not the Rossi of the previous 35 years. So I don't know. He could prove us wrong. I think Marc will... Whatever happens. Yes, I have absolutely no doubt in the back of my mind, he's thinking most MotoGP World Championships or one more than Valentino Rossi. And he's now not a long way off catching and beating Rossi's win record. 2 years plus the balance of this year, so kind of 2.5 seasons, gives him enough time to do that. If that's his thinking, I don't know. I certainly think that little Maniki is knocking in his head now, because he's a lot closer than he was, middle of last year. So, I think these things play into, he factors this in. But I think first and foremost, he's comfortable, he's happy, he feels he's fit, and he's going to give it a good go. That's how I think that would have been his thinking. I also said a while ago, when we kind of knew he had re-signed, but no one had said anything, I said once Marc signs and it's official, all the other cards will fall into place. So I wouldn't be surprised if over the next, now until before the summer break, all the contracts that are signed already will be made known public. So, and we kind of know who they are, but So there are 1 or 2, the Tech 3, possibly one rider at Trackhouse, but we think that's a done deal. Other than that, and the Honda seat, no one's really 100, but the rest of them, the Pedro Acostas, the KTM with Digi and Alex, I think that'll all come out very soon, because they were waiting just to confirm what Marc was doing.
Yes, and I'm excited to see Marc there, because there's so many things that he still has to tick off. But it's only going to get harder from here because of his political state, because of Pedro Acosta coming to Ducati, because of Aprilia's rise, potentially because of Yamaha's rise. I don't know if you caught it, Paul. We'll quickly touch upon it with Jorge Martin on that Gypsy Tales, where he said, I signed the Yamaha contract because something big is coming with the 850s. They know the bikes. I don't know if you watched the interview. It was the arrogant side of Jorge Martin that I said is there, and there was some great chat from Jorge Martin. There was a good personality that that often see, that one that lures you in to be a fan, and then he'll say something and you go, that you see, that's why
you mullet.
I cannot be a fan. This is why I've got your cap in my basket online, but I can't press it. Because you say something like that. But if you haven't watched it in the comments, go watch it. It's on Gypsy Tale. Pedro Acosta one is fantastic.
But Rob, I just want to highlight the difference between the two. Pedro Acosta just came across as a guy, so he just happens to be very fast on a motorcycle. Just a normal 22-year-old having a chat with the host, where exactly what you say about Martin, he tried to control it.
Yes.
He wants to be the, I'm Jorge. And I thought it was great. It was, most of it was highly entertaining. He told us some insights. I mean, like saying after Qatar last year, he honestly thought he was going to die. That's being vulnerable. But then, like you say, he chips in every now and again with this arrogance, which you didn't see if you watched the Pedro Acosta one, which I watched first. He was almost like, yes, you want to talk to me? Well, cool, let's chat. So that's the difference. But anyway, I digress. But go to Gypsy Tales. Anyone who's, and I mean, my background is motocross. I love motocross, and he is a motocross guy, Gypsy Tales. I don't even know what his name is. He was here in Cape Town doing the commentary at the Supercross. So he really, that's his background. And I mean, he interviews some great guys, yes, and just such a casual chat. Yeah, Gypsy Tales for anyone who's got 2.5 hours to waste. Absolutely entertaining.
Yeah, well, it was great, that one comment. I mean, go watch it. I'm not going to give too much away, where Martin talks about, the data sharing within that year that him and Pecco were going on.
Pecco,
He was literally saying, I would go out, because my data was shared with Pecco, I would go out and have to calculate, be slow in this sector, speed up in that sector, so that Pecco didn't get a full idea of that. There was great insight there. Really, go watch it. I mean,
that just shows how I'm going to say almost, and it's maybe the wrong thing to say, they're there to win a championship for themselves, but he's not a team player. He's in it for himself. And I'm not saying that Pecco's never done that, or Marc Marquez has never done that because of the data sharing. Yeah, so Martin was honest enough to say it, but I don't believe that would have factored in Pecco's brain at all. He would have been, we work for the collective. But anyway, a different subject altogether.
We could have a whole show on that show.
Which I think we've discussed,
We probably, there's a good comment here from Mike Archer. Before we go on to Marc Marquez and we end off the show with a couple of other little points. If nothing else, a possible reserve test ride for our Brad. It's a very, very valid point. Let me tell you why. So Brad finishes the season with no contract. Cool. You're sitting there with no contract. Modern day MotoGP, Paul, with the sprint racing, the demands of it. Cal Crutcher came out on the weekend and made a very good point. I was joking. So Saturday night, I had my football team kind of prize giving and social. We went pub crawling and whatever. And I was making fun of them. I was like, yes, you footballers are soft, because I'm the opposite. I'll go and break legs. I don't want a hydration break. My last game, they're like, halfway through the first half, hydration break. I was like, what is wrong? We're grown men. I hydrated myself before the game because I knew it would be hot. Hydration break. Anyway, then I look at the World Cup and I go, hydration break. Can you imagine in MotoGP after 12 and a half laps, they go, hey, listen, everyone must have a dope, and then you can. I was like, come on. Anyway, the demands of MotoGP are there. Cal Crutchlow said it, he kind of said to the point was, listen, we don't want a hydration break, and I.
Rob, you've disappeared.
Okay, have you got me back? Am I back? Have you gone? No. Am I back? John Kotzer, the hydration break is for advertising. I agree with you there. Can everyone hear me and see me? Paul's frozen.
I'm back.
Maybe he's going to come back now.
Okay, Rob, I'm back.
Rob, Johnny Martins, thank you. So Paul's now gone, unfortunately, but hopefully he's buffering. Paul's buffering.
Yeah, I can see myself.
Remove him. Thank you, Michelle Lewis, for letting me know. I'm going to remove him. Let me message him and just say, rejoin if you can. It's probably my wife watching one of the housewives of somewhere in life, using all the bandwidth. Both back there. There's Paul.
Okay.
Are you back, Paul?
I'm back. Yeah, you very out of focus, but that's okay.
No,
we can hear
back.
you.
I can't hear Paul, and he's like frozen on.
I'm talking away. Rob, can you hear me? Hello, Rob. Rob.
Yeah, that's
okay. Can you hear me?
Fine. I've got a for radio, so that's fun. Let me try and no, he can't. What can I do?
Okay, Rob, you're back.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, yeah, we're fine.
Okay,
you're not in focus, but I can hear you.
No, that's fine. Sorry, it must have been, as I said, my wife watching one of the housewives of something.
No, that's cool. Okay, looks like we're up and running.
No, I've just lost. Okay, anyway, the Cal Crutchlow, John Coetzee said the hydration break is for advertising, which I probably is. Anyway, so Carl Crutchlow saying, the sitting for the 30 minutes, they need to think of the riders sitting out in the sun. And what's the point of having the bikes there when all the riders are sitting in the pits? It's just a stupid. Anyway, the point being, Brad, no contract. If you look at the last couple of years, the script in MotoGP, Jorge Martin was out for long. Savadori was a full-time MotoGP rider for quarters of the season. Carl Crutchlow, 40 years old, hasn't ridden a motorcycle in 3 years, is now a full-time MotoGP rider again, potentially for a very long time. And I hope so, because I've got you can't see it, but I've got a Carl Crutchlow helmet here. There. That needs signing. I really hope he's going to come to Silverstone so I can get it signed. And I literally bought it on the basis of I could potentially get it signed. But anyway, Brad Binder just keeps those leathers nice and clean, keeps his name in the hat. All it takes is a Marc Marquez or the Ducati is a bit far-fetched. They've got Pirro, I don't, but there's this experienced MotoGP rider available there to do these wild card rides and that, and anything can come from it. We talk about this chance that he needs on the 850s. This could be potentially that chance.
Yeah, absolutely, Rob. Well, if you have a look at what Danny Pedrosa did last year when they brought him in as a wild card, I mean, he finished 4th. So you need a fast guy. We've said it all along. You need a fast guy to be your test rider. So hopefully Honda, I know they've got Aleix, but he seems battered and bruised at the moment. Honda, Yamaha, I'm not sure. They're using Augusto Fernandez. Surely Brad's a better option there. So worst case scenario, that would be fantastic if we could see Brad as a test rider, just possibly not at KTM. But you never know. Obviously KTM, and I thought I saw Danny Pedrosa testing the 850, but definitely Paul Espargaro was on it. So, they seem to be tied in there. There are other options for Brad in terms of testing. Honda, Yamaha, let's hope something comes of it, because he really deserves to be there. There's no doubt.
So Daryl Holmes might be spoiling the party up for us, but there will be no wildcard riders from next year. So Daryl or Paul or anyone, just let's clear that, because he's right. They've banned wildcards, but that's banning wildcards as in Augusto Fernandez on a third bike.
Yeah, correct.
You could have a replacement rider as a wild card. So Brad Binder would be pulling in for an injured Pedro Acosta, let's say, at Ducati.
Yeah, so then I presume it would be a replacement as opposed to a wild card, because with Liberty Media taking it over, they wanted to run like Formula One, where even if Zoe gets injured on Friday afternoon, and that's not the reality, but they're kind of saying like Formula One, Friday afternoon you need to have someone on the bike. That won't happen in MotoGP. It's a little bit more complex than a car in terms of swapping out and replacing riders. But they're almost talking about having your spare rider, for want of a better word, standing at the back of the garage, suited up in a set of leather. So if something happens to rider A, he can hop on the bike, and they've got 22 or 24 bikes on the grid, whatever their quota is, going forward, if we do see additional bikes added to the grid. But that's their thinking. The reality is a little bit different, because a motorcycle is different to a car. But so the point being, it would be a substitute or a rider filling in for an injured rider, and hopefully there's a spot for Brad somewhere to look along those lines.
Yeah, Johnny Martin's Brad isn't a test rider. Johnny, I'm not saying a test rider, because I think that ship has sailed, and I don't think Brad wants to do that. I'm saying if he's not a full-time rider, keep yourself sharp, keep yourself riding bikes, keep yourself fit, which I think is ingrained in Brad now. He'll always do that, because a potential phone call could come at any minute. Look at, again, I'm using Carl Crutchlow as a reference here, but I'm using Savadori in the past. I'm using Michele Pirro, who's made appearances. Iker Lecuona, most recently in Hungary. That could be a replacement, not test rider, replacement rider. I think so, a good option. And that's all it takes. Brad Binder finds himself on a KTM, a Yamaha, and a Aprilia, a Ducati, whatever means, goes and performs, loves the Pirelli tires, loves the less aero, does everything, goes and performs. Anything can happen. Who knows? This is Binder fans just like splurging out the most positive, thoughtful process we could possibly think. So let's see. Let's jump onto the Marc Marquez bandwagon. I know a lot of people hate it, and we had a comment earlier about we're going to be like Paul Bird and the commentators, where they only talk about Marc Marquez. Yeah, I'm a Marc Marquez fan. The thing is, how do you not talk about the guy? Is my reply to when people make those comments on social media. How could we not talk about Marc Marquez in this episode? Okay, never mind. He's just come back from his 8th Whitney Motorsport Racing, who currently has our Brad Binder, Blaze Baker racing for them in the BSB Championship. Great team. Check out our social media, Facebook and Instagram. We follow them. We've got our sticker on their bike, which is very proud for us as Motor Rider World, a South African company in the BSB paddock. There we go. Brad Binder alongside Blaze Baker in British Superbikes. Whitney, make it happen. You're just going to have to open that checkbook up a little bit more.
Yeah, proper. Yeah.
Pounds. Just promise Brad you'll pay him in rands with your pounds, and you should be okay. You should get away with it then. But Paul, how do we not now sit here and go, okay, right, he's come back from his 8th comeback, not 100% fit, and Mark plays the mind games when he says, I can't win at right-hand tracks. I don't know how to turn right. It's mind games. Hungary, oh no, don't even talk about me winning. He goes and wins. Mark was the master at it. Rossi was the master at it. But how do you not talk about Mark? He's come back. He's 80, call it at maximum 90% fit, which I don't think is anywhere near 90. I'd say 85, 80% fit. And he wins back to back. And he's closed from 120 points down to 40 points. He's back in the championship. Could potentially go for world title number 10. How do you not talk about the guy?
And the danger is, Rob, now, for the first time when he was asked, do you feel you're now back in the championship? He said, yes. Every other time he said, it's too early, I'm too far, 100 this, blah, blah. For the first time, and that to me, if I was Marco Bezzecchi, I'd be putting my nappy on, because you're going to poo yourself, because suddenly Marc's got the belief that he's never had a shortage of belief. And now he's come back and he's like, okay, well, Hungary, I won left-hand track. I shouldn't have won at Brno because right-hand track, very physical, very fast, very hard. I don't want to say he made it look easy. I still sit on the edge of the couch watching whenever he's on track. But he certainly never gave Ogura a sniff at getting a wheel past him once he had got into the lead. So I think he controlled the pace. He's the master at that. His temperament, his mentality, his racecraft, and as much as Johnny Martins wants to shoot us now, it's just who he is. He's become Mr. MotoGP, and as you say, you can't not talk about him. He's thrown a big spanner in the works once again. Nobody said, but look at De Gian Antonio. He's only 28 points off the championship, or Martin's only, 14 points. Everyone said Marc Marquez is 40 points off the championship. So talking point, Rob, that's just how it is. He is the new... He isn't. He's Marc Marquez, but he's replaced Valentino Rossi as the man to watch. And I think it's just, you can't help but everyone, no matter love him or hate him, I can guarantee you, everybody, when they tune in, they look to see where Marc Marquez is. Then they look for their favorite. Because if Marc is at the top of the leaderboard or Marc is leading the race, those that don't like him are disappointed. And then they want to see where their guy is. And those that love him are like, yes, Marc, please don't crash. Just do what you got to do. So he's polarizing. That's who he is. You love him or you hate him, but you can't take away that this is this is modern MotoGP at its best.
So I'm going to try and be diplomatically correct here, and I'm not going to go too much more on about Marc, because he does all the speaking for himself, and I think you've nailed it. John Kotze has already left us, and if it wasn't as big, because I've seen his profile picture, if he wasn't as big as he is in his profile picture, I would say something to him, but I'm not going to, because he'll murder me. Johnny Martins, as you said, that comment at the end, he thinks he is MotoGP. I would probably do the same if I was Marc Marquez. But here's my argument, Paul, and it goes back to Rossi when he retired. I saw a statistic, or I saw an article saying MotoGP audience lost whatever percentage, quite a big percentage, 40%, or in Italy alone, 60, 70% when Valentino Rossi retired. And I went, but does that make you a MotoGP? I'm a fan of MotoGP. I love Marc Marquez. I love Bez, I love Brad, I love this, I love this, I love this, I love this. If Marc Marquez retires tomorrow, I'm not going to stop watching MotoGP.
Yeah,
When
exactly.
Rossi stopped, I'm a massive Rossi fan. When he stopped, I didn't stop watching MotoGP. So those people that leave, so you were following MotoGP for one person.
Yeah.
I find, listen, I love the commitment to one person. I love it. And then, I think South African interest in MotoGP will massively dwindle once Brad Binder leaves there. I have no doubt about it. But it just perplexes me that, and it's big numbers. Like I went to that Mugello a couple of years after COVID also happened, but after Rossi had retired, and it was dead. It was a ghost town, and I was like, okay, that's fine, but there's a lot more to MotoGP than one person.
Yeah,
MotoGP is a lot more than one person. So yeah, I understand it as fans. Like, okay, you're talking about Marc. I'm sick of hearing about Marc. I don't want to hear about Marc anymore. Cool, but at the same time, I just don't understand it. I can't wrap my head around it. I love the sport, come hell or high water, no matter who's winning, no matter who's losing. I could quite happily turn the TV off right now where Brad is. I get great. I want to put my head through that TV week in, week out. When in qualifying is on a first sector red, second sector red, and then something happens, then I want to murder that TV. But I don't know. It perplexes me. I don't know.
Yeah, Rob, I think it's definitely a love him or hate him thing. I don't think there are too many on the fences. I suppose there are. It's like anything. Rossi definitely stoked the Marc Marquez fire, no doubt. The fact that people will watch for one person, I think that's pretty much part and parcel of motorsport. So, but then you look at Mugello last year and this year, Pecos and Bezzecchi. The Italians have drawn the crowds back in. Yeah, so maybe they don't have that die-hard fanatical fan shouting just for a personality like Rossi, but they're drawing them back in. So collectively, I think it's having a guy like Rossi out of the sport has brought in new fans. And when Marc moves on, you'll bring in new fans who will support Pedro and whoever it might be. I just don't like the fact that people watch one rider and that's all there is to motorsport. And whether it's Marquez or whoever, there's a lot more to it. And I like to think we watch it for the sport and for the ability and for the, everything that it encompasses. But unfortunately, you do have at the moment kind of one standout rider, and it's been like that since for quite a while. And he is an enigma. He's been through a hell of a lot. He comes across to me as someone who's always smiling and always grateful and always happy. A lot of people say he's arrogant. Yeah, maybe I don't see it. But like we said, you have to have that arrogance. He certainly doesn't have Jorge Lorenzo's level of arrogance, which, if he did have it, he's earned it. He's records say, and Oli Moto is very good at saying it's the stats that showed he's the second best that's ever raced a MotoGP bike. So, yeah.
I understand what Oli Moto is saying here. Rossi retiring was like your favorite football team not playing anymore, not necessarily one player, which he's not wrong. Rossi was that big and is that big.
Yeah, for sure. And no doubt, Rossi moved MotoGP from motorcycle racing to the global sport that it's become. Absolutely no doubt. You cannot for 1 second take that away from him. His antics when he was a 17-year-old, he started the fan interaction. So absolutely no doubt. There's, what he's achieved and what he did for MotoGP was move it up, not even one level, 30 levels. But other people are continuing that now, and credit to them. And, don't have it out for Marc Marquez because of his talent. He's a talent. Pedro Acosta is a talent. Diego Moreira, maybe not so much. David Alonso in Moto2. In Moto3, he was an enigma. There are these super special guys. And to win, you're going to break some eggs to make that omelet. That's just how it works. So yeah, I'm not wild about this polarization of one and the hatred that people spew, regardless of who it's for. We watch this because we enjoy it.
Yeah. So Good comment here from Sticky Wiggy. Thank you for the comment. I am one of those. I will stop watching GP once Brad is gone. I will stick to Darren in Moto America, which is far more entertaining than MotoGP. And there's been a couple of comments around that about people are struggling to keep the passion or the support for MotoGP because of the political way, because of its Spanish and Italian, and it has come that way. Which, okay, yeah, I can understand. I just still love the fact that I'm watching. I don't care who's on that motorcycle. Motorcycles pushing the limits of what is possible. It's just going above and beyond what is actually possible on two wheels. That's why I watch MotoGP. I don't watch MotoGP for anything else. That's why I have these helmet collections. Yeah, I've got a Lorenzo helmet. I've got a Bautista helmet. I've got a Carl Crutchlow helmet. I've got a Manuel Poliolo. I just love to me they're gladiators and warriors that have done insanely amazing things on two-wheeled motorcycles, and that's why I love it. I can watch any form of motorcycle racing, to be honest. Or having said that, I do battle with the TT. I must be honest, because it doesn't make sense to me to do that on the roads, and I just don't have that connection, because I just think that I think too much of a parent when I watch TT. But anyway, so it's Sticky Wiggy. I understand it, and I think there is going to be a big drop, kind of like what Italy had. But now, Paul, I'm going to say something, and I'm just looking outside my window here because I hope there's not a sniper with a gun. So if you see a bullet fly past my face, or if you see like me shot in my arm, it's because of what I'm about to say. Okay, there's no red dot on me or anything. No,
not at the moment.
I've always, I don't know if I want to say it. To me, Marquez and Rossi are the same person, the exact same person. That arrogance, the way they mask their arrogance, the way they manage their careers, no girlfriend, no wife, kind of motorcycle racing, the way they disguise that they haven't been in the newspapers for the wrong reasons, like caught with drugs or caught speeding or caught, with a girl in a hotel room or a girl around just very, very professional. But when they're in that paddock, it's their paddock. I am the best person. Yeah, no one can touch me. I am MotoGP. Like Johnny Martin said there, he thinks he's MotoGP. Rossi thought he was MotoGP, and he was MotoGP. I didn't care if he thought he was MotoGP. He was MotoGP. To an extent, he is still MotoGP. When he's on the grid, when he's at a race meeting, the cameras are on him. You want to watch more. More people want to watch. He's a big draw card. So I do. I think they're the same person. They're driven by the same thing. They wake up every day driven by success. Even after racing with Rossi, he's driven by success. He's on that grid. I'm still fearing a sniper. To me, they're the exact same person. They're the same person. So that's why I found it so easy to kind of support both. It's like Messi and Ronaldo. I can support both because I see two driven athletes. I don't go, he's better. I just see two guys that just have that superpower to wake up every day and push themselves. I wake up and I can diet for 3 days, and then I'm hot full of it. Then I want my pants. You know what I mean? So I look at these guys and say, for that long a time, to be able to wake up every day and do that at that level and push themselves, that's arrogance. That's arrogance to say, I am the best person on this planet and no one else is going to tell me any different. So yes, Marquez has arrogance. Valentino Rossi also had arrogance. They just disguise it very well with the smiles, the waves, all that. So yeah, that's how I look at it. So I'm going to catch up with comments now.
Rob, I think if anyone's watches the sport passionately and is honest, that's a very, very valid point. They're two completely different people, but their mental attitude, their ability, their drive, their self-belief, exactly the same. And go back to Mick Doohan. People hated Mick Doohan. Mick Doohan didn't care. He went to the track. He was employed by Honda to win motorcycle races. That's why he went there. He didn't go there to win a fan base or to sign autographs. And the journalists hated Mick. Those who followed the sport like I have, like you have, go back to those days. Mick Doohan must have been the rudest oak in the paddock to speak to. Because if you asked him the wrong question, heaven forbid, people forget about that. That's what his motivation was to win. He was there to do a job, and that was it. So Rossi opened it up to the fact that, yeah, come on, let's be nice and we can make this enjoyable. And I think that was a great change from the Mick Doohan. Less Schwantz was more people orientated. Eddie Lawson sulked around. These are guys who, these are big winners in MotoGP, not the 5 race wins or 1 championship a la Quartararo. These were the big names. Rossi moved that. He had that charisma. And now guys have moved it. I think Marc has that. He just picked up a fight, got picked between 2 very, like you say, the same people. And that's what's divided the population. Had that fight been with somebody else, Rossi versus, but it wasn't, because they were the 2, the pup and the dog, and they were sorting out their level of whatever it is, hierarchy. And unfortunately, love me or hate me for saying this, Rossi lost the battle.
Yep.
But what it is they've set a benchmark, and the next best, I presume it'll be Pedro Costa or whomever, will move the benchmark. And some people will love that person and some people will hate them. That's just how it is. But what you say, Rob, I think you're spot on. These Oaks, if you look at their winning characteristics, exactly the same.
So, Paul, I must just warn you got a red dot right here.
Yeah, I'm finished.
Whitney Motorsport Racing. MotoGP is the pinnacle of two-wheeled motorsport. The riders are phenomenal, but for me, MotoGP has always been about more than just the rider. It's a spectacle of development. Every season is a fascinating battle to see which manufacturer have found something over the winter, who's taken a step forward, and who's unexpectedly fallen behind. The engineering war behind the scenes is every bit as important as what happens on track. There will always be the standout riders, but even the very best. ... I think he ran out of brilliant things to say. Motorsport, poetry is brilliant. Sticky Wiggy, I fully agree with you. Watching endurance racing, like with Shez Marias doing well there, and Stephen Winnendal with the factory BMW team, it's fantastic to watch. But yeah, it's as much as I love watching that, it's still not MotoGP.
No, sure.
There was another comment here that I want to...
Also, Rob, I don't know where Stiggy Wiggy's based. Here in South Africa, we get to see MotoGP. We don't see BSB. We don't see World Endurance. We sometimes get highlights at the end of some of the races, we don't see the US racing. So, we kind of starved. We don't see any local bike racing on TV. So we kind of starved for what we can see. That's why I think so many of us are so glued to MotoGP, because if you're a motorcycle racing fan, that's all we get. Even last year we used to get highlights of BSB and the US Superbikes. We haven't seen that this year at all, unless I've missed it. But make no mistake, I'm always looking. So yeah, it's a bit disappointing for us as viewers.
Johnny Martins, red dot, Rob, on your pip. Clyde Matthews, Uncle Rob is getting cancelled now. Colin Kane, I'm with you, Rob. I'll take the bullet for you. EBN 88TT, Lorenzo and Pedrosa are not considered aliens. Good riders, yes. Aliens, no chance. I would argue with that.
Listen, EBN, I think Lorenzo is probably one of the most underrated 5 times world champions that we've ever seen. In terms of people look back and say, oh, was he that? He was proper. He's the only Oak who's beaten Marc Marquez before Marc's injury. He beat Rossi, so I think, me personally, I didn't like him at all, but Lorenzo was proper good. On the 250, he was in a class of his own.
Paul, I think we had the conversation a couple of months ago. I talk about I managed to get 3 Lorenzo replicas. I've become an eBay. I wanted to say a horrible word. I became an eBay, and I've picked up some really brand new kind of replicas in the box for good prices, because they're 5 years and older. They're pretty much useless as actual road helmets. They can only be for display. And I managed to have a contact and got them signed. And I was that guy back in the day. I just can't enjoy Lorenzo. I just don't like the guy. I really don't. Now that I'm 43 and I'm a late bloomer, I suppose I've matured very late, but I look back and go, man, the guy, that's why I have his helmets now. The guy was a machine. The guy, I won't say idolized kind of status. I would still put Rossi and Marc probably slightly ahead of him in terms of my
Yeah.
fan support.
Yeah.
But I'm a
Yeah.
fan of his now. I look
Yeah.
back at him, and I'll find myself watching YouTube videos of the guy and just sitting with my mouth open, drooling, because he was that machine.
Yeah. You see what happens though, Rob, is, and I'm thinking aloud here once again. You've now taken the emotional side out of it. You're watching the talent. You're only watching him for what he did. You're not looking at him going back 10 years and saying, oh, but I don't like this oak. You just watching what he could do on a motorcycle. I mean, just think of Essen that year. Breaks his collarbone on the Friday, flies back to Barcelona. It was Essen. Flies back to Barcelona, gets it plated, comes back Saturday, finishes 5th in the race on Sunday.
Yeah.
Tell me that's not superhuman. Now, this is an oak that, as a rider, I didn't particularly like, but go watch that now. This oak, I mean, that was one thing with Lorenzo. Now we can carry on for another 40 hours.
Yeah.
Pinpoint accurate, millimeter perfect, never out of line. But once he got to the front, you just didn't see him. He was that, but now, as I say, you go watch the old stuff. You've taken the emotion out of it. You're just watching the talent. Where back then you watched him as the arrogant Lorenzo or Martin or whoever, and you're still invested in them. But that old stuff, you're just watching how well he raced.
Yeah.
And I think that makes a difference.
That does. It absolutely does. So some great comments here. Sticky Wiggy saying he's read a lot of it on Reddit and stuff, where people saying, if Brad does leave MotoGP, he'll be forgotten very quickly, which he finds upsetting and sad. I don't think so. I think Brad's left enough of a mark to be spoken about and considered for many years. Certainly from a South African point of view, should be held on a pedestal for a very, 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 very long time. The sad thing that what I see is that, where's your Binder replica, Sticky? I don't have a Binder replica, but I have an actual Brad Binder Moto 2 bell helmet that he gave to me, which sits. I wish I could switch. I'm too scared to move anything in case we buffer again or do something. And I'm actually sitting in darkness here, but I got my Brad Binder shrine. So I've got a signed picture on his wall done by Michael Rogers Art, signed by Brad, and then I've got in a case, its own separate case I find myself working and I just glance over at it and I turn into a fanboy. I get a little shiver and then I can carry on working. Where he says, to Uncle Rob, thanks for always having my back, signed by Brad Binder. And it's one of the most cherished items I have and will ever have to be. These are all great. Sheridan's actual race worn World Supersport helmet is on par with that. My best mate in the entire world, a rider that I've looked up to from day one. Love him. He's more than a friend. He's a brother. He's a family member. Beaten both of them. Listen, make no mistake. I've raced against both of them. I've beaten them. Brad was 13 years old. Shed was a grown
Doesn't matter.
But I've beaten them. I've got sheets of paper where my name's ahead of them. But yeah, Sticky, I'm very proud. That's very, very, very proud. If I look over the last years now, just before I left South Africa, with the circumstances that I had, Brad and his family, I owe them more than I'll ever be able to say. I owe them my life. My family owes them their life. When my daughter was born, diagnosed with Down syndrome, we didn't know what to do. We didn't have the money or the resources to support her. The Binder family didn't even blink. They came. I would phone Brad and say, "Can we do a charity meet and greet event?" Tell me where and when, Uncle. They've just been that amazing. But if I look back at all the years, Brad's handed me boots, gloves, and I look at it and I had to auction the stuff off. And again, some people in this chat have supported me through those times to get us into the situation now where we're almost there with my daughter getting her visa, and that's sorted here in the UK, and her life is set, and that's her and my son's life. It's our life. But if I look at that, I don't want to say it's a regret, because I needed it. I needed that. Without that, we wouldn't have been able to get my daughter to where she is now. But I think I could have quite easily had this whole room upstairs that I have here, just Brad Binder shrined happily. One day I'm going to go back to South Africa, find out where they stash all of his stuff, because I know they must have a stash somewhere, and I'm going to steal it all. I'm going to take it. I'm just going to take it and then keep it at my house. They should, Marc Marquez in his hometown has got a Marc Marquez little Hall of Fame, or like a museum type thing. I'm desperate to go there. It's got all his championship winning bikes, whatever. we need one in South Africa. I know at one point Ridgeway Race Bar were talking about kind of stocking some of his stuff and making like it needs to happen, because South Africa needs to never forget Brad Binder and what he's done for and what he's achieved in MotoGP as a South African rider, coming through where he did. He didn't come through the easy year. I don't want to put that every rider's journey has been easy. The easier channels that a lot of the other riders have had, and that's why a lot of us in this chat will always be diehard fans, and that's why some people can maybe not understand why we so diehard and support this guy and have positive things to say even when he's not performing. It's because we know the story, and we've all been involved in the story. All of us have been at the track, at a track day where Brad's there, or at a meet and greet, and we've all had that little bit of time with Brad, and it's cherished. It's worth more than its weight in gold, and I'm struggling to find the words, because I hate having that feeling of being indebted to people, which I'm not with the Binders, and I know that, but I always will be personally. I'll always feel that way. So, which is why you cut me and I bleed Brad Binder in a way. But my goal with MRW and my brothers carrying the torch perfectly has always been to support South African riders, no matter what. That's been our first and foremost. We've lost a lot of sponsorship and advertising because of it. We don't get the advertising support we should from the likes of BMW South Africa, and that, because they don't think it's the way we should go. We're a racing channel, and my argument is, well, it's funny how Yamaha spend gazillions to go racing, all their road bikes, but you don't think racing is valuable. But anyway, you cut me and I bleed South African riders. That's why we support each and every one of them, and Brad and Shez and Stephen Windall, they've been at the pinnacle of it, and Cam Peterson, Matthew Skoltz in Moto America. It's great to see, and that's why it's hard to talk about Brad the way we've had to and been forced to talk about him over the last couple of months.
Yeah, Rob, I don't think there's much to add to that. Your passion is just unbelievable, and you've experienced the generosity of a Brad Binder firsthand, and who he actually is. He's not just a motorcycle racer. Yeah, that's his job. That's what we love. That's what we're passionate about. But behind the motorcycle racer is a man and a family with a heart of gold. And once you've spent time with him and Darren, you understand that these are human beings. As much as there's drama going on that we don't know about, these are actual fantastic people who care for one another, care for us, look after each other. And I think that sometimes gets forgotten when you're angry with your guy because he crashed or the bike's not performing. And sometimes we need to just maybe regroup a little bit. And what you just said now is absolutely hits the nail on the head, actually hits home quite hard for people who, we take it at face value. Come on, Brad, do better. There's a human being there. So, yeah, I think that was a very, very well said, very well put.
Blaze Baker's joined us. What's up, Rob?
It's a bit late.
Great to have Blaze Baker, part of the Whitney Motorsport racing team, and one of our top South African riders. And a big thank you to Whitney Motorsport, because they've got Blaze Baker. They've got two South African riders. Sorry, I'm terrible with names. I can't even remember the other South African rider's name. My brother does that now. But great to have Whitney Motorsport supporting South African riders, and great to have them commenting here, and great to have Blaze Baker on the channel as well. So, yeah, hopefully soon. I know I've spoken about it so many times, but hopefully we'll be able to get, a chat with Brad, a chat with Darren, a chat with Matthew, a chat with Cam. Life sometimes just takes over, but it'll be certainly great to chat with them. Speaking about South African riders, Paul, I think it's only right to end the show by giving another superstar doing his utmost to try and make it in that very hard world that is the MotoGP paddock, in Rushain Woodley. It does feel like Groundhog Day. We talk about Brad. It's the same with Rushain Woodley. I'll have a slightly different take with Rushain Woodley. As I said, speaking to them at Le Mans, unfortunately, to get in that paddock, you're not always going to land your bum in butter. And with all due respect, Rushain is not in one of the best teams. They have their certain moments where they can shine, and the results are there, but overall, not as consistently good at setting up the bike or all those things that you need to be able to go fast in this paddock. So that's the first thing that Darren, that Rushain Woodley is on the back foot with, and you can tell it by his teammate. Him and his teammate are always very close.
Yeah.
Odd races, Richey's better. Odd races, Cormac's better. But in general, they kind of around that same place. Speaking to Arushan Mudli at Le Mans and just looking at Richey and how he was walking around the paddock on that, very hard for a young 18-year-old living his dream, but knowing his time could be up. And I see a rider riding with, looking over his shoulder, going into every race weekend, instead of doing his utmost to be positive and going for the result, but just having this cloud, just having all this weight on his shoulders that if you don't perform, which unfortunately at the moment you're not, there's a Spanish youngster, there's an Italian youngster, there's a European youngster with a lot of money that'll come in here, and good luck to you, goodbye, wherever you go. So a hard weekend again for him. Don't know what his future's like or what's it going to be. Someone's asked here, Clyde Matthew, what is Richey's future plans for 2027? I don't know. Again, I'm not opposed to this going the World Supersport route. Albert Arenas is now doing it. Make it in the MotoGP paddock, Moto3 world champion, didn't cut in Moto2, leading the World Supersport Championship now, potentially catapult into World Superbikes and potentially back into MotoGP, a la Nicola Bulliga. So not the end, but certainly not looking great for Richey Mudli, but certainly you can put your house on it. There's a rider going into every race weekend. They're giving his 110 million%, just not falling for him.
Yeah, definitely. And I think the difference between Brad and Richey is the age gap. Brad at 30 odd years old doesn't have another 10 years ahead of him, can't do like you say, let Richey go to World Super Sports, have 2 good seasons, get back into maybe a Moto2 ride and then MotoGP. He's young enough at 18 years old. He's got 12 or 13 years ahead of him to have a little reshake or a shuffle should he not continue in Moto3, which he's going to have some pretty good results to get a ride there at the moment. So let's hope that his season progresses, picks up, that he starts getting some points. I don't think he's scored any as of yet, so that would be important. But he's young enough that there's lots of opportunity. And we've seen our guys, they can definitely cut it in the US. So there's nothing to say you can't cut it in like a World Super Sport. So, let's hope we'll keep thumbs for him. But certainly, same work ethic as a Brad Binder will give you 100%. That's, I think, just happens to be a South African thing. You can't change that. So, let's hope that things improve for him. Or if anything, he gets a ride for next year. You never know.
Al Camino, I'm very proud of Richey. Great comment and a great way to end off the show. Thank you for that, Al Camino. I was going to say something, Paul. I think it's time to end it. 2 hours, just over 2 hours. I'm now sitting in the dark because I forgot to turn my light on. I'm off to ABR Festival here in the UK tomorrow to set up. Okay. I'm there for 4 days. Well, Wednesday to Sunday, basically. It is looking like it's going to be the hottest day the UK has ever seen in its entire life tomorrow, which is 18 degrees. 40 degrees and plus, 40 degrees plus tomorrow. So I've got that, and then 30-something degree. I'm sitting here sweating like a piece of cheese on a windowsill. It's so hot. But anyway, it's been a great chat, Paul. As always, thank you to each and every one of you in the comments. Great conversations as always. Absolutely love it. And looking forward to Assen. Assen always kind of springs up a few surprises. Never know what the weather's going to do, although it looks like it's pretty much the same as it is here in the UK, which is beautiful, hot sunshine. Slight chances of little spits of rain, but nothing too serious. And can't wait for the BSB guys to get going. Whitney Motorsport, good luck to you guys. I know you just had the Knock Hill round now. Picked up your first point there in that championship, so well done to you, and we'll continue supporting you. And can't wait for Moto America and Darren back in action. Matthew Scholz, Cam Peterson, Dominic Doyle, World Endurance with Shez and Stephen Windal. Stephen Windal winning this past weekend in Spanish Superbikes. Then we have South Africa, the World Motocross coming to South Africa now, Paul?
Next weekend, eh? Next weekend, and Camden McLennan third in the championship, eh?
On the
picked up a race win this weekend.
Calvin Flanderen, who unfortunately is a South African but holds a Dutch passport because Motorsport South Africa wouldn't support him.
Definitely my mates, Lighty, Slade Smith. I know he's riding. I'm not sure which other South Africans, but definitely Slade will be taking part. So that's next weekend, 4th and 5th of July.
We're going to try and get you in there, Paulie. We've sent emails to MXGP to try and get you some media accreditation, hopefully. And get you in there and you can cover for us. But again, thank you so much. Are you going to World Superbike in a few weeks, Rob? Unfortunately, not Olimoto, isn't it? It's the same weekend as Goodwood Festival of Speed, Olimoto, and I'm going there with Zero for the first time, unfortunately. So, although I'm hoping I can maybe slip out on Saturday or Sunday at least to get there. I've got my media accreditation and everything sorted, but it's just whether I can with work or not. I wanted to try and get a Petrucci helmet signed for my collection there, but I don't know if it'll happen. But if I am, I'll let you know, Olimoto. Otherwise, I'll potentially see you at Silverstone MotoGP. I'm definitely going to that. But yeah, everyone, thank you once again, Paulie. Thank you to everyone in the chat.
Rob, only a pleasure.
And we'll chat soon.
Lekker, yeah. Thanks, everyone. Have a good evening, and we'll catch up after Essen.
Cheers.
Cheers. Good night.